Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started of the regular City Council meeting. Today is May the 5th. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:30. And we'll start with the flag salute. Councilmember Gama, would you like to lead us in the flag salute?
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to a roll call. Madam Clerk, please take roll.
Councilmember Gama,
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Here.
Councilmember Perez,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez,
Here.
and Mayor McQueen LaJean.
Here. And we're going to have Councilmember Hernandez do our inspiration this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. As you know, today is Cinco de Mayo, and we're celebrating our cultural heritage on this day, among other things. But I wanted to just read the story to you and provide a little education about the history of Cinco de Mayo. So bear with me. It's only a page long. Once upon a time in the heart of Mexico, there was a small town called Puebla. It was the year 1862, and the country was in turmoil. Mexico was facing a formidable challenge, foreign invasion led by the French Empire, which sought to expand its influence and control over the nation. The Mexican people were weary from years of conflict and economic hardship, but they were determined to defend their homeland. In Puebla, a young general named Ignacio Zaragoza rallied his troops. He was not a man of great stature, but he possessed an indomitable spirit and a fierce love for his country. Zaragoza knew that the odds were stacked against them. The French army was well equipped and experienced, while his own soldiers were often poorly armed and outnumbered. Yet he believed in the heart and resilience of his people. On May 5th, 1862, the two armies clashed in a fierce battle. The French forces, confident in their superiority, expected an easy victory. But Zaragoza and his men fought with unparalleled courage. They were fueled not just by the desire to win, but by a deep sense of pride and unity. As the sun rose over the battlefield, the sounds of cannon fire and the cries of soldiers filled the air. Against all odds, the Mexican army emerged victorious that day. The Battle of Puebla became a symbol of resistance and hope, demonstrating that even the most powerful adversaries could be challenged by the spirit of a united people. The victory was celebrated not just in Puebla, but throughout Mexico and beyond. It ignited a sense of nationalism and pride that resonated with people far and wide. As the years passed, Cinco de Mayo transformed from a local celebration into a national holiday. It became a day to honor the bravery of those who fought for freedom and to celebrate Mexican culture and heritage. Communities across Mexico and in the United States began to commemorate this day with parades, music, and traditional foods showcasing the rich tapestry of Mexican traditions. Today, Cinco de Mayo is not just a celebration of a historic battle. It is a reminder of the strength that comes from unity and resilience. It teaches us that no matter how daunting the challenges we face, we can overcome them when we stand together. The spirit of Zaragoza and the brave soldiers of Puebla live on, inspiring generations to fight for their dreams and to celebrate their identities. So as we gather to celebrate Cinco de Mayo, let us remember the lessons of history. Let us honor the courage of those who came before us and embrace the diversity that enriches our lives. In every dance, every song, and every shared meal, we find a connection to our past and a promise for our future. Together, we can create a world where hope and unity prevail, just as they did on that fateful day in Puebla. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I will now move to public comments. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments not pertaining to the agenda items?
We have one public comment from Becky Bruning.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council staff, and audience. My name is Becky Bruning, and I'm here representing Real Guppy Outdoors tonight. On June 1st, we're having our annual fundraiser dinner. We have like about 20 tickets left, So if you're interested, you better get them. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the agenda review. May I have a motion and a second to accept the agenda?
Move to approve?
Second.
Great, thank you. Madam Clerk? can you take
All
roll
in
call?
favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Do we have any council members who have a conflict of interest as relates to any of our agendized items? If not, we'll move on to our presentation. So the first will be the Peace Officers Memorial Day and National Police Week proclamation. And we'll have Police Commander Albertson to come up while our Mayor Pro Tem is reading the proclamation.
Okay. Proclamation, Peace Officers Memorial Day and National Police Week, which is May 15th, 2025, and then May 11th through the 17th, 2025. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as the National Peace Officers Memorial Day, with the week in which it falls as Police Week. And whereas there are approximately 900 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Port Hueneme Police Department. And whereas members of the Port Hueneme Police Department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life, property, by protecting them against violence or disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. And whereas it is proper that we express gratitude for the dedicated service and courageous deeds of the men and women of the Port Hueneme Police Department, and for the contributions they have had to the security and well-being of all people in our community. And whereas more than 20,000 law enforcement officers in the United States who have made the ultimate sacrifice and have been killed in the line of duty, including the sworn officers in the county of Ventura. And whereas the names of the dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officer Memorial in Washington, D.C. And whereas May 15th, 2025 is designated as the National Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of the service and sacrifices of all officers killed in the line of duty and their families. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme formally designates May 11th through the 17th, 2025 as Police Week, and May 15th, 2025 as Peace Officers Memorial Day in the City of Port Hueneme, and publicly salute the service of the law enforcement officers in our community and in the communities across the nation. Proclaim this 5th day of May, 2025.
Thank you. Over to you, Commander Albertson.
So on behalf of the men and women of the Port Hueneme Police Department, I'd like to thank you for the proclamation. Chief sends his regrets. He's actually at the Sacramento event today. He'll be coming back this evening. And I just wanted to remind council and the public that the Ventura County Peace Officers Memorial is taking place on Wednesday, May 21st at 10 o'clock a.m. Up at the Government Center. So I would encourage you to attend. It's a really nice event, and I'd like to see everybody there. Thank you.
21.
Great, thank you so much. And go ahead.
One, two, three.
We'll move on to our next presentation, and that's the Mental Health Awareness Month proclamation. And I would imagine there is a representative for Dr. Durning to say thank you. So we're going to have our Councilmember Perez is going to read that, and you can go ahead and come up if you'd like.
Thank you. Mental Health Awareness Month, May 2025. Whereas there is a proven connection between good mental health and overall personal health. And whereas, according to the World Health Organization, over 450 million people suffer from a mental illness. And whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and second leading cause of death among people ages 10 to 24, and 90% of people who die by suicide have an underlying mental illness. And whereas only 1 out of 2 people with a serious form of mental illness seeks treatment for his or her mental illness. And whereas good mental health is critical to the well-being of our families, communities, schools, and businesses. Whereas public education and civic activities can encourage mental health and help improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. Whereas people with mental illness recover if given the necessary services and support in their communities. And whereas every citizen and community can make a difference in helping end the silence and stigma that far too long have surrounded mental illness and discouraged people from getting help. And whereas the City of Port Hueneme Police Department, and agencies throughout the Ventura County will strive for community awareness and education by taking part in various events throughout the month of May to create awareness and support those dealing with mental health issues. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme hereby recognizes and proclaims the month of May 2025 as Mental Health Awareness Month. We call upon an increase in public understanding of the importance of mental health and to promote identification and treatment of mental illness.
Thank you. I am not Dr. Dennering. I am Connie Moreno-Peraza. I'm the Assistant Director of Ventura County Behavioral Health. I'm very honored and I'm very thankful that you are giving us this proclamation. Want to always promote our Access and Crisis line, if I may, 866-998-2243. We are 24/7, 365 days. We know there's a lot of folks suffering, not just even past the pandemic, but we are seeing our young people suffering also from anxiety, depression, suicidality, suicide attempts. Please, let's stay connected with our young people. 1 in 5 adults are suffering from mental illness. As you mentioned, all the statistics that are very, very concerning. We are here to help. We come to Port Hueneme to serve those in need, and we are very thankful for this proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'd like to get a photo.
Can you repeat that number again, please? Thank you.
Actually, we just centralized our both alcohol and drug and mental health lines, so 866-998-2243. Folks can call for either a mental health condition or an addiction.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much. And for our last presentation, but a very important one, I'd like to invite up our city clerk staff, Mr. Jana Alvarez and Miss Evelyn Gia.
All right.
And while they're making their way up, Councilmember Gama will read the proclamation.
Yeah, I had a machaca for breakfast today in celebration of Cinco de Mayo at the Grand Casa restaurant in Oxnard. It was nice. 56th Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week, May 4th through the 10th, 2025. Whereas the Office of Professional Municipal Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the Office of Professional Municipal Clerk is the oldest among public servants. And whereas the Office of the Professional Municipal Clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. And whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the Office of the Professional Municipal Clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it's most important that we recognize the accomplishments of the Office of the Professional Municipal Clerk. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme does hereby recognize the week of May 4th through the 10th, 2025, as Professional Municipal Clerks Week and further extends appreciation to our professional municipal clerk staff. Thank you very much. Our city clerk, Georgiana Alvarez, and administrative service coordinator, Evelyn Guyen, to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. Proclaim this 5th day of May, 2025. Thank you so much, and I think all of us are indebted to the work that our city clerk, Georgiana, does, and her support with Evelyn, and I appreciate you every time we're up here and all the work that goes into getting us what we need.
I just wanted to say, on behalf of the municipal clerks everywhere, I want to thank you for this proclamation recognizing and highlighting all the work that we do. I invited Evelyn here with me tonight. As many of you know, she's our administrative services coordinator who works in the city clerk's office part-time. I wanted her to share in this moment because she's part of the success of the city clerk's office. And also maybe one day she might cover a meeting for me. Being in the clerk's office isn't easy, and there's a certification process to go through. The first certification is a certified municipal clerk, the second one being a master municipal clerk, and I am proud to say that you have a master municipal clerk, Servinia.
Yes.
There are lots of regulations and government codes that you have to know, the Brown Act, Political Reform Act, Public Records Act, and Evelyn is familiarizing herself with them, and she's working her way through that. It's an honor to serve in this role. It's often behind the scenes, but we take a lot of pride in making sure it runs smoothly. So I'm truly grateful for your continued support and recognition from City Council and the community, and I need to give a special thank you to Deputy City Manager Charles Peretz and City Manager James Vega for their trust and support, because it makes this job a lot easier. Evelyn, did you want to say?
I just want to thank everybody for bearing with me. I'm new to the role, so I'm very appreciative of Georgiana and kind of following in her footsteps. So I thank you all.
Thank you. We're going to take a picture, and maybe Adam, could you take our picture for us? Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Don't cover the seal.
No, keep covering the seal. One more step, half step. Perfect. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. We'll do one more.
So I would like to thank Georgiana for keeping us organized and making sure that we are aware of all of our training, our requirements, everything that we need to do. You're not our secretary, but boy, you sure keep us up to date on everything, and I appreciate you. You go above and beyond, especially with this. I told her in the beginning, you have too much to do. You don't need to make me a binder. Just give me a packet and I'll figure it out. But she insisted on this beautiful binder and making sure that we are all in sync and have everything that we need. So thank you, Georgiana.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Evelyn and Georgiana. You know, when I see you at work and when I interface with you, two things come to mind: professionalism and effectiveness. You both are I feel so proud of you when I see Evelyn running around City Hall and taking care of business. And every dealing I've had with you, Evelyn, and of course Georgiana, has been nothing but just perfection. You're always taking good care of me and good care of this council. Thank you so much for all you do.
Do you have anything?
Yes, just thank you. Since coming on the council, you've been very helpful and just super nice. And just want to thank you. The service is excellent. You and Evelyn do a great job. So I'm really appreciative of it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Did you have something else?
Just want to thank you both. I appreciate all the work you do for us, and the attitude and the make us feel good when we don't know what we're up against or losing stuff, and it's just great to have your support. So thank you.
Yes, and I'll just say ditto. You guys are doing a great job. Okay, so we will now recess the city council meeting and call to order the Port Hueneme Housing Authority regular meeting. We will take roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Member Gama,
Here. Here.
Member Hernandez,
Present.
Member Perez,
Here.
Member Brown,
Here.
Vice Chair Lopez,
Here.
and Chair McQueen-Lejeune.
Here.
And let the record reflect that Member Blackwell is absent.
Great, thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Okay, we will now consider the items on the Housing Authority consent calendar, which is enacted in one motion, unless an authority member would like to pull an item.
Move approval?
Second.
Great. Roll call, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we will now, we'll now move to the Housing Authority public hearing. The 2025-2029 5-year Public Housing Agency Plan and Capital Fund 5-year plan. Madam Clerk, do you have proof of publication as required by law and a complete file of reports and exhibits?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you. Will staff please present the report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. All public housing authorities, ourselves included, are required to review, update, and amend our housing agency plan every 5 years. This update would be the 2025 to 2029 5-year public housing agency plan. We are required to hold a public hearing after a 45-day comment period has elapsed. We are here today to hold that public hearing. And as part of that public hearing, staff is recommending that council adopt a resolution, that the Housing Authority Board adopt a resolution approving the 5-year plan, the Housing Authority 5-year public agency plan, and a capital fund 5-year action plan. One of the main changes this year is to the Housing Authority Admission and Continued Occupancy Policy, or ACOP, and the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan. And so we have to implement those items by July 1st, 2025. That is reflected in the plan. And we noted in our staff report that the agency is currently waiting on the HUD's software vendor to update the system so that the city can, or the public housing agency can transition to the new regulations. So that's one of the main items addressed in the plan. Other than that, it was fairly consistent with the prior plan. So staff is recommending that the Housing Authority Board adopt a resolution approving the 5-year plan and the capital fund plan at this time.
Great. Does any board members have any questions?
I got one question. So I know they've been putting off fixing up inside the building, our Mar Vista here. The carpets are so old, they got Oreo spots, they got people, and they've been telling us they're going to replace them. I don't know if they have the funding or they're just waiting for something, but I was just hoping that they would do that pretty soon. Okay. That's my comment.
And what I will say related to this plan is that as part of this, the 5-year capital program plan includes $227,000 of capital program projects for each year of those 5 years, which ends up totaling over $1 million. So there is work intended, are included with the 5-year plan. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, we will now open the public hearing and take public comments. The time is now 6:55. Are there any public comments regarding this item?
No public comments.
Thank you. We will then now close or conclude the public comments portion. I will now close it and the time is now 6:55. We have before us the recommendation to adopt the resolution approving the Housing Authority's 2025 through 2029 five-year plan and its capital fund five-year action plan and budget. May I have a motion and a second?
Move to approve?
Second.
Great. Is there any discussion? There's no discussion. Madam Clerk, please take roll.
Okay. Member Brown?
Yes, or
Yes. Member Gama?
Yes.
Member Perez?
Yes.
Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lopez?
Yes.
And Chair McQueen Lejeune?
Yes.
Motion passes with Blackwell absent.
Thank you. We'll now move to the authority members' reports. Any reports? Any comments? Let's move on to any future agenda items. Great. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. The time is now 6:56. And the next regular scheduled meeting is June 2nd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. The time is now, again, 6:56. Okay, now we're going to call to order the special joint meeting of the City Council, Housing Authority, and Surplus Property Authority Commission. Madam Clerk, please take a roll call.
Member Brown?
here.
Council Member Commissioner Gama?
I am here.
Council Member Commissioner Hernandez?
Here.
Council Member Commissioner Perez?
Here.
And Mayor Pro Tem Vice President Lopez?
Here.
And Mayor, Chair, and President McQueen Lejeune.
Here.
Member Blackwell is absent.
Great, thank you. We're going to move to public hearing item number 7, the biennial budget fiscal year 2025, 2020 through 2026, and 2026 through 2027 budget workshop. Madam Clerk, do you have proof of publication as required by law and the complete file of reports and exhibits?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Will staff please present the report?
Yes, thank you. So today's budget workshop number 1 for this year's two-year budget process for fiscal years 25-26 and 26-27. We expect to have a second budget workshop in 2 weeks, followed by proposing adoption of the budget 2 weeks from that point in early June. And so we really wanted to start today with really very high-level, big picture conversation. I think as we go through the budget, it'll be clear why we're sort of starting big picture this year. I think we're sort of in the midst of a couple of changes, and we sort of want to kind of make sure we take the time and identify that, and that everybody sort of sees the direction where we are going, and then we'll be asking the council for to provide direction from there. But we wanted to start here before we really dig into the details of the proposed budget at the second workshop. And so we wanted to focus on the big picture. We wanted to talk about sort of entering a new phase with our budget as we look at the next 2 years, and understanding of what would be a sustainable budget for the city and what we expect to be sustainable for the next couple of years. And we've had a lot in our city of sort of peaks and valleys in our history, where we've had years where we did new things and revenues might have gone up a lot, and then years where that went away. And so we wanted to really start by just talking about what is a normal budget for the city, and how do we avoid sort of cycles of spending and then cycles of reduction moving forward, and how do we just have a sustainable, consistent budget. So I mentioned earlier that we're here at the start of a second phase. I think it's, since the day I started, we really were looking to try to get ahead of the cannabis business revenue reductions. We knew that the reductions were coming. We tried to adjust our spending to be sort of back to the pre-cannabis levels. And I think that we're at a point here today where we essentially had gotten there, and we expected that to sort of be a place where we could stop and maybe take a breath and kind of prepare for the next challenge. I think what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, I know I've sent some updates on some things, but is that the next challenge appears to be here. And the new word of the day that we've heard really consistently, we're hearing it from other cities, other agencies. I think it's going to be what we hear for the next few months at least, is the phrase economic uncertainty. We've had consultants who work for the city who advise on things like sales tax and things like that call us and say, due to economic uncertainty, we are revising your revenue projections down. Due to economic uncertainty, we are expecting that these things will cost more. So the key word we want to focus on, because I think over the last couple of weeks, we really sort of had to stop and go, okay, we've gotten to a more balanced, sustainable level. We still have some small things we're trying to work through, but we've gotten to a more sustainable position. But now we're hearing this uncertainty word, and how much do we react to that, and what would be overreacting to that, and we want to be careful not to do that. And the key word being uncertain is important, because I think what we are going to see this year is that every few months, I think we'll have a clearer picture of what's going to happen, and we'll be making more adjustments during the year, versus right now trying to guess at, will next year be positive or negative. So we note that at the end of the slide, saying expect to have budget adjustments throughout the year. So sort of going back to that phase 1, phase 2, the last 2 years were focused on trying to make sure we weren't being too reliant on cannabis revenues, which also, I think one of the key points we wanted to highlight there is that the cannabis revenues have multiple impacts, because they also impact sales tax and Measure U. So losing cannabis revenue actually impacts 3 key revenues. And so when we spoke in September of 2023 and we had identified that as a major concern, at that time, it doesn't sound that long ago, but at that time, Oxnard and Ventura still hadn't issued permits to any dispensaries within their cities. And so we had talked about at that time, let's try to get ahead of it. Let's try to start paring down that spending. And I think what happened, what we saw is that they did finally get open. If everybody remembers, Oxnard and Ventura both had challenges where they had to restart their permitting processes. And so at that time, it was sort of like unclear how long that would take, but they did get their dispensaries open. They opened up many. I know that there's a couple still in progress and everything, but I know I had heard at least a dozen. And so that impact that we were trying to get in front of happened quickly. And so the hope was that we were going to be proactive, get in front of it, and have some time where we kind of got ready for it. But it was good that we were proactive, but it ended up happening, right away, basically. So this chart shows, like we talked about, the sort of that double effect of sales tax and cannabis. The fact that when cannabis sales drop, it also impacts sales tax. Again, we sat here in September of 2023, which would have been about where that peak was. And we said we thought there was a drop coming. And so you can see that it did in fact occur, and it dropped pretty significantly. I think at the time we spoke, there was maybe some thought that, well, it might drop, but it won't drop back to the level that it historically had been, because it should be something. But you can see from the chart that it really has dropped back to sort of the historic level. So again, I think one of the key points I want to highlight is when we look at expenditures in a couple of minutes, we have been trying to reduce them, but that drop was so kind of quick and steep that it's a struggle to kind of even being proactive to really match that level of decline. So as discussed, the city took efforts immediately to try to correct and prepare for that decline. If you remember, in September of 2023, the city council prudently approved postponing millions of dollars of capital improvement projects that would have essentially utilized the city's reserves. We took some of those dollars from some of those projects and we put those towards completing Bubbling Springs Park to ensure that we didn't run out of funding for Bubbling Springs Park. And then some of those dollars just got programmed into future CIP projects, but that was a key thing to avoid sort of draining the reserves all at once when those revenues were at a peak. And then there was direction for staff to continue working towards balancing the budget. We have continued to work towards doing that, reducing costs sort of across the board, including just at the last council meeting, we reduced the cost of the broadband master plan by about $5 million. And so we've just consistently been looking at everything we do and how we can do it more efficiently, or identify maybe portions of plans and projects that are not priorities at this time. So we've consistently worked towards that. And then as you can see there, we show the full-time employee count, which shows that, again, when we look at, sort of what was normal, was 22, fiscal year 22, 23 normal, or was normal before that? And you can see that that year, and going back quickly, where the years where the cannabis revenues spiked, that employee counts also spiked. And that's a challenge. We'll talk more about personnel costs in the future, but once you add an employee, it's an ongoing cost, and it's very difficult to then, when you see revenues drop, also drop your expenditures. It's just an ongoing cost that doesn't allow you to do that. So this chart shows the sales tax and cannabis revenues again. Overlaid over it in orange is actually our full-time employee count. And so you can see sort of how it spiked with the cannabis revenue coming in, and that from before the cannabis revenue started to decline, we were trying to already start identify some savings by attrition, but it hasn't declined to the same degree or with that same kind of steep decline that the revenue has, because ongoing costs are more difficult to reduce. And so that then reflects in this general fund expenditures chart, where you can see sort of similarly there was that spike just like we showed on those other slides in about fiscal year 22, 23. And then as we have been starting to try to taper down, you can see how costs started to come down a little bit, but then you can see it starting to go back up. And that reflects the challenge that we have, that everything we do is getting more expensive. So even cutting, or if we went back to that FTE count, even having fewer employees this year than last, costs still go up because each one is more expensive. So it's sort of just reflects that challenge of managing our expenditures. I think a lot of cities are seeing it right now, of like costs have really increased, and it's creating this challenge. We've been proactive to sort of try to address it, but you can still see how it's going to be an ongoing challenge. It's every year when you look ahead, every year that that we move forward, there's going to be a constant expenditures rising, and we'll have to try to keep them within revenues. So. And so this is, I mentioned personnel earlier. For us, just kind of seeing the big picture, personnel costs are about 70% of our general fund budget. Personnel costs, which include salaries, benefits, are about $20 million of our $27 million budget. And so sort of across, like right off the top, if you cut everything else and we don't have computers or, printers or, anything to work with, any tools, our costs would be $20 million. So there's your kind of hard floor, So, so if that's the case, you don't have much wiggle room when revenues start to drop. I would say that there's some agencies around us who have a very different personnel cost makeup. We'll compare that when we come back for our workshop. We'll compare it to some other cities and kind of spell that out. But there are other agencies near us that use a lower percentage of their annual budget for personnel costs than that. So it's just important to know that, because even if you tried to cut everything else, you can't really cut that unless you're looking at reducing personnel, essentially. So why is that important? Because it sort of speaks to the challenge that, I've heard some people say, well, like, we could wait and we can just make severe reductions in the future. But if our personnel costs are $20 million, you really can't reduce that far down. So it's sort of important to just know that is that cost, and it makes it difficult. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room. So what we have been doing, though, is that as we've had positions become vacant, we've looked at reorganizing, restructuring, combining positions. Like we started off looking at that full-time employee count, and you can see that just 5-6 years ago we had significantly fewer employees. So a lot of it is sort of paring back to what we used to do, and that's not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily what we want to do, but it's what we can afford. So we're continuing to do that. We've asked our employees to do more with less resources. I'm proud to say that I think we have done more with less resources over the last couple years, but it's also important to note that at some point you can't keep doing more with less resources. So I think as we struggle right now to kind of put together a balanced budget, that's one of the challenges we're running into. So we have successfully been able to to reduce operating expenses and keep them at a lower level. They're starting to get pushed back up because of those significant cost increases across the board. I know I mentioned this at the last council meeting, but just one example that people wouldn't think of is, on top of the $20 million in personnel costs, we also just have some hard costs, like the cost of the city to have insurance. And our insurance in the last couple weeks was increased from, we pay about $1.8 million for insurance, and it went up, I think it ends up being like 12% to about $2 million. So when we're looking at trying to keep increases from going up more than a couple percent, but if you get a couple of bills like that, it kind of throws off your whole plan. So we wanted to show this just to show that we have been really trying to hold the operating budgets tight, and we haven't really increased it. I think you could see here, and you could see here that there's a few things I'll point out, but looking first at expenses. So when we made those adjustments in September of 2023, we were able to reduce our expenditures down to about $27.15 million. In 24-25, our operating budget went up to about $28.7 million. And you'll notice that that's a trend that essentially when we set our budget, the second year increases about $1 million because of COLAs and negotiated increases. And so then this year, we're looking to try to reduce it back down from that high of 28.75. And we're still working on it, but when we put this report together, we were down to 28.17 million, which is actually significantly lower than where we started. If you remember, in February, we got a presentation from the finance director that there was about a $2.4 million gap at that time. And you could see here that when we put this together, we were down to maybe $400,000 or $500,000 gap. So we're working on it. We're still working on trying to get balanced. But you can see we worked on it. We reduced it down because it would have trended up to about 29.5 million. So we reduced it down to about 28.17. But then right away, you see that the second year, because of COLAs and merit increases and things, it already would go back up like another $1 million again. So that's a battle we're facing because when you look at the revenues aren't really going up, or not anywhere near as fast as the expenditures are. The revenues, as you can see here, 27.2 million to 27.5, about a $300,000 increase. And then we're looking at 27.7 or 27.8, however you round, next year. So maybe a $300,000 increase. And then we did get an update from our sales tax consultants who look at sales tax and Measure U, and they're saying that due to economic uncertainty, which will be the word of the day, that they're actually suggesting we revise that even down a little bit more now. So flat revenues and expenditures going up because everything's getting more expensive. Just big picture, it means it's going to be tough to stay balanced, each year. It's going to be an ongoing battle. And that's where we're looking at some things right now to sort of try to figure out how to structurally change to not to become more sustainably budgeted. So I mentioned earlier, phase 1 has been working to try to get ahead of that cannabis reduction. I think we're about there and where the goal was when we started. It's just unfortunately we're looking at phase 2, economic uncertainty. Again, keyword is uncertain because everybody's basically saying to be conservative because we don't know what's going to happen over the next 6 months to a year. And so, like I mentioned, a few of our consultants and things have called us and said, be conservative, adjust down, but no one's really sure if it's really going to be there or not. So I think we're just sort of getting to the point of realizing that the goal will be have a good plan, and then as things change, be prepared to adjust as we need to. So let's see. So one of the points of today's item was initially we did have a bigger gap we were working on, and so we were going to come and explain the adjustments we were making to try to get balanced, and then we had identified some options that we wanted some council direction on. We have gotten closer to being balanced. I think that we're getting close to being able to bring a budget forward for at the next workshop that is better balanced. I think the big challenge that we'll see again is that second year, because if we're balanced the first year, but then we have $1 million in increases the second year, that's going to be the real challenge. So we have a proposal and a sort of a plan of how we're going to address that. But the item was on the agenda to allow the council to give direction. At first, the gap was expected, or when we put this out a week ago, the gap was bigger than it is now because we continued to work on it. So we're still looking for direction, but I think at this point it's we sort of know what direction we're going on unless council says to go in a different direction. So I'll just note that what we have done already is that top list. We met with each department and we went through a 5% reduction exercise. I will say that each department, we really appreciate that each department took it seriously and each department made reductions. And I will say on behalf of myself and our finance team, we've looked at the departments and they're pretty cut to the bone. There's not a whole lot left. And so that's just important to keep in mind because it's next year or the year after, the conversation really won't be, can we do 5% reductions again? We're essentially on year 2 or 3 in a row of doing that, and there's really not much left to cut that doesn't impact service levels. So we appreciate that everybody did it. I think it's a step we needed to take, but again, it's when we get to that second list there's some things we have to look at doing differently in the future so that we, because that won't be an option moving forward. One of the things that we have put in place is a temporary external hiring freeze. And I think at this point, we are calling it an external hiring freeze because there may be opportunities to sort of reorg or restructure and kind of move people into roles that are needed. But again, just looking at how much money we bring in and how much money we spend, there's not really funding to keep bringing more people on board. So it'll be sort of that almost puzzle of trying to, fit people in the right places to be able to maintain service levels. And it's definitely a challenge. We also, on September of 2023, the city council took several steps to sort of get prepared, and one of them was creating a CIP reserve fund, because there had never been a CIP funding source. So the CIP projects just basically added to the deficit every year. And so that has been created. It was funded for 2 years. And so we do have some funding in that CIP reserve, and using that, like starting to use that now. We essentially created it for a rainy day, and it looks like it might be a rainy day this year. So we're proposing starting to use that to pay for the CIP, which then would not, which would help balance the budget. The key there that we would just highlight is that, the goal was to try to create that and get a couple years of funding built up to pay for a project. We really only were able to create it and have it in place for a pretty minimal period of time, so it'll help us for a couple of years, but it's not the long-term solution. And then, as we've said a few times, with that keyword economic uncertainty, the last recommendation would be just be prepared to make adjustments throughout the year. And I will just note there, I did reach out to other cities and some other agencies, and everybody's starting to realize that point at this point. We aren't going to be the only ones who sort of kind of adopt a conservative budget and just know that there's probably going to be changes during the year, one way or the other. So that's what we put in place that we've worked on over the last couple of weeks, even as this agenda has come out, where we've really been able to sort of fine tune the budget and keep working to balance it and making progress. At that time, we had said, kind of next options, if we couldn't get balance, would be the 4 options noted, which are additional reductions of annual or ongoing expenses. I think, that's a simple way to say kind of what we've already done, which is going through the departments and identifying whatever reductions we can that don't impact service levels. If the gap was bigger, I'd probably be asking, okay, what service levels are we willing to impact? But I think when we bring the full list of reductions at the next meeting, we'll talk about, some of them will inevitably have impacts, but we haven't had to actually eliminate any like full programs or anything at this point. And I think the staff report noted when we wrote it that if we couldn't get balanced, we might have to talk about programs, for example. I will use this only as an example of why we want to avoid this if we can. And I think we can at this point this year. But eliminating a program is actually a lot more impactful than maybe it would seem, because as a small city and essentially with very bare bones resources over the next couple years, once we eliminate a program, there's not going to be a plan to get it back anytime soon. So we really want to avoid that. And I'll use this as an example just for the purposes of illustrating that point, would be, we do a lifeguard program every summer. And the lifeguard program costs the city about $250,000. And if it were as simple as, well, like maybe we take 1 year off where we don't have that program, that might be something we'd consider. But the reality is right now, if you were to cancel something like that, every other agency is desperate for lifeguards. They would take all your lifeguards. You'd lose all your certifications. You'd lose your whole structure. It would really have to be just known like that wouldn't be a short-term solution. And so for that reason, we're doing our best, and I think we're we're on the path to not have to have those kinds of conversations right now. Again, just from the couple months ago where we saw a $2.5 million gap to now, I think we're on the path towards avoiding those types of things. But what we have done though is look at things like keeping vacant positions unfilled instead, and reducing travel budgets, training budgets, those types of things. So still impactful, but we've tried to avoid, for that reason, we've really tried to avoid any impacts to any like real programs that would be longer term impacts. So so we'll keep working on those. The other was we were going to note that one of the goals a couple years ago was we said that when revenues were high because of cannabis, we did not want to adopt a plan that used our reserves. That the reserves are there for years that are tough where we don't have the revenues. And so, again, a couple weeks ago when we were writing these reports, we were looking and saying, well, maybe this is the year that we have to use some of those reserves to get by. I think that the plan that we'll be bringing forward in a couple weeks, I don't think we'll be doing that for year one, but that may be a conversation for year two. And I think the real sort of conversation for year two will be, can we continue to identify savings? Can we continue to have some attrition to get balanced, or do we need to use the reserves we have to, if that doesn't happen? So the other option, the third, which we are working on and council has approved us to work on already, is revenue increases. The key there is, we're not looking at increasing revenues, and this I think was the key, is we're not increasing revenues because we were overspending. We've reduced the spending, and we're spending pretty minimally, but we're looking at increasing revenues because the costs of providing services has gone up, and we haven't increased those costs or those fees. And we had talked recently about some of the utility funds having not been increased for 12, or utility rates not being increased for a decade plus. And so just like everything in this presentation is the cost of everything has gone up, including those. And so that's something we need to look at. So the council had approved that we look at those. We're also looking at our master fee schedule in some other areas. And so when we looked at our revenues and they were flat, I think looking at the things that we haven't increased for many years is one way to sort of stay balanced moving into the future. And then the last, which we're going to explore, and we're going to bring some items to the council on this, but it's really not an ongoing solution. It's a one-time solution, is exploring options with surplus city property. And we actually do have one that we're working on that I think would be a positive all the way around, but it would particularly would be a positive right now if we could kind of include that as another way to balance that, what we hope is a more temporary gap on that second year of the budget. So we're looking at all of those things. Like I said, when we wrote this report, we were still had a significant gap where we were going to really try to talk through some ideas to close it. We've made good progress on that, so I'll leave it with we're going to be looking at each of these, and we have implemented the 4 up top. We're looking at the 4 on bottom. It's probably going to be a combination of those 4 things to get balanced over the next 2 years, and try to sort of truly get balanced versus just trying to keep making 5% reductions every year and trying to catch up. So that is where we're at. And we will be bringing the second workshop in 2 weeks, where we will go through significant detail of what's proposed to be reduced and where that leaves us. So, but again, the key thing today was we just wanted everybody to really understand that big picture. It's not unusual when we're having a cut year or a reduction year that, each position that you have to hold vacant or each cut you make, somebody will say, but that's the one that's really important to me. And we really wanted to have the conversation big picture because we want everybody to see it's not about, one or two things where it's not about, can we afford maybe, or, well, $10,000 here isn't a big deal, or, those kinds of conversations. Where we really wanted to show everybody it's really about structurally changing how we look at the budget and sort of knowing what is a realistic spending level and continually trying to get us to that point. So that is our workshop for today, and we'll have more information in 2 weeks, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? We'll just take questions at this time. We'll come back around for comments and discussion.
Yes.
Councilmember Perez.
Mr. City Manager, you inherited this problem. When you got here, you came into a situation where we were having issues, and you knew of the issues before, when our last budget meeting, before you even started, you were concerned about some of the stuff that you were hearing. And with the new finance director and everything happening, what things have been done in the finance department where you have confidence in what is being done and what is you're hearing from them, the numbers that you're hearing, to make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past?
I think that's where we were trying to highlight. There's a few charts, but this is a good one that, it's really trying to understand what normal is and trying to make sure we're staying within that. I think one thing I heard from a lot of our employees was that people have sort of seen this cycle of, something good happens and then revenues go up and then they drop. And then if you add ongoing expenses to a temporary one-time revenue, you'll be in trouble the next year, And so I think that's really the key thing, is trying to really figure out what is our spending level, what is our revenue level, and trying to stay there. And the challenge for us right now is getting balanced, and then the next challenge after that will be when revenues increase, not doing the same thing all over again, and not kind of falling back into that cycle. So for us, it's really been, the key was really trying to figure out what is that normal level, because you see the chart go like this and go up and down, but it's like, what's that line where, it's that we should be aiming for every year. So
To follow that up, when you first started, the first thing you tackled was our budget. We had a deficit. You worked hard, you got rid of it, and then everything you did was pretty much undone. Are you confident in the staff in the finance department? Are you confident in everyone being able to do what they need to do to make sure that we balance our budget in the next few years and can not make the same mistakes?
yeah, I think the challenge the last couple years was every time we would make reductions, the cost of what was left would go back up. And so it wasn't so much, that it wasn't things being added back into the budget, but it was that, when this department has this position and that position is this many dollars, and then the next, and we got it down to the, the dollars that we have, and then the next year it goes up 7% because of negotiated cost of living increase. And so that's been the thing we've been fighting. I think it's the thing we're going to keep fighting. One thing we have to keep in mind is this year contract negotiations are scheduled, so it's something that all of us are going to have to sort of keep in mind. Again, this chart is key to me because it just, looking at the revenues, that's really the key point to everybody, is the revenues are flat. In the past, like we talked about a minute ago, when there were these spikes and everything, sometimes people go, well, this is the new normal, but this is the normal, and they really haven't been increasing because of economic uncertainty. We don't expect them to increase. if something, happens unexpected and they do increase, great, but then that's where the key point would be. But we should still try to stay within what normal levels are if there's this one-time change. So I think we understand that. From your question was, are we ready to and able to sort of, keep that in place and really not make that mistake. And I think we understand that, and we're going to keep working towards it. It's just for all the reasons mentioned, and this chart's the perfect example of just, even if we make no additions next year, the costs go up. It's going to be an ongoing challenge. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. So going back 25 years, macro view, it seems like every time the city ran into this situation, they would sell out a piece of property and build it up, whether it's the Hideaway right across over here, Harbor Walk, Ocean Walk. I forget all the names, but so here we are again. We're in the same situation, and if we were to sell off the 9 properties at the Hideaway, and I've always been uncomfortable with the fact that the city owns 9 units in the Hideaway. My fear is that, yes, we would solve our problem like we've always done in the past, but is that something that you would consider? And I think it would solve our problems just like the city had solved their problems throughout the, every time they ran into the situation, they'd do a new development. So here we are in this situation again, and if we were to sell, say, those 9 properties at the Hideaway, what changes would we make structurally so that we would not, because we're running out of properties to sell. And I could go all the way back to the sale to the port, the big area out in front of Anacapa View Homes. Right over here, there used to be a hospital, whatever. I mean, all these developments. So we seem to, so anyways, do you feel that if we were to sell, say, those 9 units, solve our problem today, would we be able to make the necessary changes to weather these storms, these revenue storms?
Okay. Yeah. The interesting thing there is actually the thing you said at the end, which is, I was going to say, and I said it earlier, that selling property is not a ongoing solution. It's a one-time solution to an ongoing problem. So we have to structurally keep working on just structurally getting balanced and sustainable. If we were to sell a property, it would be essentially, which you ended on there, it would be a way to try to stay balanced for another year to buy us time to do that, that's been part of the strategy the last couple years and into the next 2 years, is trying to basically make sure we are limiting what we can to have the time to make structural changes without them being painful. And if you look at that chart that showed the FTE count, the full-time employee counts, the number of employees have dropped over the last couple of years, but it hasn't been painful, so to speak. We haven't had to have, we haven't had to impact any existing employees. It was vacant positions. And that's sort of the thought process is, instead of having to have, if we hadn't made the reductions we had, we would have been in a spot where we would be having a much more difficult conversation.
Right.
But because we made those reductions, we're able to say, now we have the time to make a couple years worth of reduction, changes. And we don't have to overreact because we haven't drained our reserves. To go back to your question about the properties, one thing is we don't want to be in a spot where we're selling a property because we have to, and so that's not what we're looking for at this point. The item I mentioned, and we're still working on it, but it would actually be something that I think the city would want to do. It's something the city has chosen to do in the past. We're partnering with another agency on a property that leads to affordable housing, essentially. So it's not something that we are saying explore it because we need the money, but the timing right now is helpful, where it's something we want to explore, and right now we could use the money, So, but I think to your point, we don't want to get to a spot where we're selling the properties that we have because we need a Band-Aid to survive another year. And so we aren't at that point. The goal would be over the next 2 years to keep working to make sure we're still not at that point. In the meantime, though, I think there's a couple of opportunities that we want to explore and bring to the council that are actually positive win-win opportunities.
So I got one more question, just for perspective. And I know when you came here, Council Member Perez reminded me that, prior to you coming in, we were like, we're going to have a skate park, we're going to have a destination playground, we're going to do Bubbling Springs, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I remember when you came in and said, I don't think you guys can afford all this. And I remember you saying, I'm not even sure if we could afford Bubbling Springs, because yes, it's an $8 million grant, but we know we're going to come over and we have cash flow that we have to dedicate. And I think, so my question is, if we did do Bubbling Springs, we'd still have the same problem. It would just be a little further out. Because I think what we dipped in our $4 million for that project.
Yes.
Out of the general fund. So, so I guess my question is like, how do we better prepare for the inevitable?
Yeah, I think to reiterate the point you made, because I do think some people have the perception, like, are we in a problem because of Bubbling Springs? And that's not the case. The way we addressed Bubbling Springs and the issues there, and there's a couple key points, is one is, remember, we had significant grant funding for the project. And then, yes, when one of my first meetings, we talked about postponing other projects, including ARPA-funded projects, and taking that funding and putting it towards Bubbling Springs. So I think we ended up with something like $8 or $9 million of the project paid for by these other sources. And then we talked about, knowing that the bulk of it is paid for by these, are we willing to essentially, fill the gap of $4 million? But to your point, there were other projects already planned that would have utilized that funding. So the conversation really was, are we willing to postpone all these projects and instead focus on one important one? Because if we don't, and I think it is true now, 2 years later, both in dollars and in staff time, we wouldn't have gotten Bubbling Springs done. We would have jeopardized grant funding, millions of dollars of grant funding. We would have probably dipped into our reserves for multiple projects that would have added up to a lot more. So those reductions that that conversation we had, I think, put us in the position now where we got that project done. We didn't drain the reserves, and it's counterintuitive because I've heard a few people say, well, if we hadn't done Bubbling Springs, maybe we'd be fine. If we had stuck with sort of plan A, I think we would have been in a much worse position, and having lost grant funding and having spent more money on design for projects that we can't afford to complete. So that was a good outcome. We're sitting here today, that project's done. It's the biggest project that the city's accomplished in many, many years. And I think it brings value to the community. So that's all positive, but the big challenge is moving forward. Like I said, we're able to grab about 2 years of CIP funding for the next couple years, which is actually the most CIP funding we've had by creating that CIP reserve in September as well, September of 2023. But there's a list of millions of dollars of projects or deferred maintenance or things like that. So it's something we still have to keep an eye on. This year, when we bring the budget forward, there's going to be, that's one of the issues we will raise, is one of the ways we're going to stay balanced is by deferring things. And that gets us by for a year, but deferred maintenance becomes a problem on its own.
Right, and projects in and of themselves bring FTEs,
Mm-hmm.
whether partial or fully, but when you have big projects that are coming along, that, and then you are putting more pressure on the system because you have to maintain it and add personnel.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to Councilmember
Okay,
Hernandez.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. City Manager and finance staff for the good work, and it's kind of encouraging, even though not, we are concerned here, that you're already closing that gap between the time the staff report went out till now, and I imagine you'll get closer to it by the 17th when we
Yeah.
do the workshop.
We're making good progress.
Yeah, that's great. I did send you a list of questions. I think you answered some of them, and I do anticipate that the others will probably get answered at the workshop,
Yep.
because they were kind of digging into some of the details here. But I do have a question about I'm assuming that the revenues that we're looking at here for the general fund, those include property taxes?
So these,
Right?
yes, these include all general fund revenues.
Okay. And our property tax revenue is just as flat as,
I would call it flat.
Yeah.
I think it increases a couple hundred, and so when you see here that the revenues increase a couple $100,000 a year, I think most of that is the property tax.
okay.
Everything else is very flat. The property tax, that's still fairly flat, but that accounts for the whatever little increase there is.
Okay.
So-
I would like to hear you talk about, more about what we will be doing during the workshop, but before we do that, can you tell me, are you making any plans to implement the economic development plan so that we can start looking at long-term, maybe short-term, long-term strategies? for
Yeah,
improving our
Yeah, so
Financial situation?
we are working on a couple elements. One of the challenges that we'll talk about in the second workshop is with that plan and some other plans, it's one of those things where, you have to spend money to make money, and you have to have money to spend money. So I think what we're looking at so far right now is we're trying to find the low cost items that we can implement and kind of get the best bang for our buck. But there are there's some projects in there that, when we have the discussion, we're gonna have to look at which ones we can afford to do now and which ones are gonna have to wait a little bit. Yeah, I was about to get into detail, but I'll save the detail for the next meeting. But we are working on some low-cost items on that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes. So 70% of our expenses derive from manpower. And then you stated that the 30% remainder, which is $7 million, looks like we really can't. You're down to the bare minimum. It's not gonna, we can't cut our way out of this. So from 2017 to 2025, we went from 112 employees, spiked at 143, down to 132. So it looks like we've gained 20 employees since then, that's currently. So what departments grew and what services did increase?
I think you could pretty much look across the board and see where each, sort of across departments, there was growth. I don't think it was, kind of isolated to one location. I think that there was, it really was sort of across the board. I think to sort of go to your question, there is going back to the FTE charts. Let me
Right
see.
there. Go back.
Did I pass it already? Let's see.
Right there.
Okay, good, thank you. So going back to your FTE charts, so one of the things we're looking at doing, one of the questions for us is sort of what's implied in your question is 130 now, is that the minimum, staffing level that we would have? And we know we've had a lower number than that in the past. I do think that the true number is somewhere in between. And the reason I would say that is because the city did pass Measure U in that period too. So Measure U is intended to sort of help, maintain service levels. And so I think that the number's in between, and that is why that approach we've talked about of sort of attrition and managing vacancies, which is what we've used the last couple of years to start bringing that number back down, is part of the plan moving into the future, because I do think that quite simply, can we afford 2 years from now to still have, 131 and a half employees? It looks difficult to do that. So
part of the workshop, can we get the breakdown between FTE in 2017 to 2024, 25 by department, so we can see where the manpower grew? Just so, because it seems like it seems.
I can provide that to the council. I think we could provide that. I only hesitated because sometimes personnel stuff we can't provide, but I think we could at least provide a count by department. But I think that's sort of part of the answer moving forward. And I think to go back, though, the positive thing is by being proactive, by already managing some of these costs and already starting to taper down, we have the time and the reserves to kind of keep doing it in that less painful way of attrition and not having to have other discussions. So that's why we said that's part of our plan, is that, managing vacancies. But we can provide, I'll make a note to provide a position count by department.
Okay, so my next question is, since cannabis is declining with Oxnard, Ventura, I know we have a cannabis in our next go around, but this pertains to the declining sales with what are our neighboring cities doing successfully that they're growing and we're declining? Or since they're opening, I can't assume they took all our sales. I know competition is probably is being very competitive. Are they driving our cannabis stores out of business? Survival of the fittest? So do we have a good snapshot? Are we competitive with our neighboring cities?
I think the biggest reason we're not competitive is, unfortunately, something we can't change. They're right off the freeway, and we're not. And I think all else being equal, I've talked to some people about this, but if you come from the north and you get off the freeway to go to a dispensary, you're going to pass one right off the freeway. And are you going to drive past that and, come the extra 15 minutes to Port Hueneme? And same thing coming from the other direction. When you get off the freeway, there's another one right there. And they're right there off the freeway. The one in Oxnard, I'll try not to use names, but the one in Oxnard closest to Camarillo that anybody coming from Camarillo would get off and pass right by, they have a Hueneme location, but they're right off the freeway now. And I think you're starting to see that, shift. So I think all else being equal, if we did everything else the same, I think they still have that advantage. And I actually would highlight, what we've heard from a lot of dispensaries is Oxnard's actually charging them a lot more because they had to, I don't remember if they officially put out the number, but the number we're hearing from people is that they essentially have to pay $250,000 for the permit to get started. And even with that, they know they want that location right off the freeway. They could stay in Hueneme and not have to pay that, but it's worth that trade-off for them. So we've heard that from some of our several of our dispensaries, that that was, even with that fee that we don't have, they're still moving forward with opening those locations. So I just think the biggest competitive advantage they have is location, and unfortunately that's the one thing we can't change. We do actually, though, and I know you and I went back and forth on this earlier today, but we do charge a lower rate than Oxnard and Ventura do on dispensaries, and which is most of our businesses. So we are still trying to be competitive. We focused on it, and then a couple months ago, there was an article in the paper about a lot of dispensaries lowering their fees, but they were at 9 or 10%, and so they were lowering to 5 or 6%, and we've been at 5% amongst the lower ones since we started. So I think in dispensaries at least, maybe some of the other fees, maybe if we had adjusted earlier, maybe we would have gotten some of those businesses in, but I don't think so, because even other cities have really struggled to get those businesses in, like the cultivation, that is just very difficult in Southern California. Manufacturing and cultivation is just very difficult because of the costs. But for us, that's the challenge. And so just round numbers, so everybody knows. So our cannabis revenue went from about 3 million at its peak in a year 3 years ago, and has come all the way down to about 1 million. So I think even projections from the sales tax consultants 2 years ago was that it would settle at like 1.6 million. Like they thought maybe cut in half, but it's really been cut into a third. So yeah, that one. Yeah. And so this graph shows sales tax and cannabis. And so that's why it doesn't just say 3 million to 1 million, but if it was just cannabis, it would show 3 million to 1 million.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, great. So we'll now open the public hearing. It's open, and it is now 7:56. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments?
We have 2 written public comments. The first one is from Jessica Baca. Good evening, council members, community members, and city staff. I am a Port Hueneme resident who genuinely loves this community. I've seen this city come together through hard times. I want to thank staff for working hard to try to stabilize the budget and protect the services residents depend on. I would like to bring up honest concerns about something that's not working: the police department. The city has serious issues with accountability, transparency, and basic responsiveness that get ignored. Adding a new police dog would require taking an officer off the streets and is the exact opposite of what this community needs right now. Everyone loves dogs, but long-term, getting another canine, which requires a handler, officer, a working vehicle, additional and ongoing officer training, and a host of other equipment is not a cost-effective solution to a problem that cannot be solved by ignoring the real problems and allowing the department to crowdfund to obtain a drug dog. We should ask ourselves if the canine the police department already has is actually working for the community. I would say it is not. I love dogs as much as the next person, but another canine for the police department is not the answer and will not help the budget issues the city has. While some are being told to tighten belts, cancel events, and brace for more cuts, somehow there's still room in the budget for a canine program that doesn't address our actual public safety concerns and puts our community at more risk. Taking officers off the streets, to even think of this, is a slap in the face to residents who are already frustrated with how this department operates. We need more officers actually patrolling our streets and officers who genuinely engage with the community, not performative programs that drain resources and remove personnel from patrol. It is already bad enough. I urge you, don't approve a police dog at the cost of real public safety. Focus on restoring trust, not appearances. Thank you, Jessica Baca. The next one is from Abraham Baca. Good evening, City Council members, community members, and city staff. I want to acknowledge the city's proactive efforts to stabilize our budget amid declining revenues and growing economic uncertainty. The actions taken have hopefully helped preserve service levels and avoid more painful cuts. As we look to the 2025-26 and 2026-27 budgets, I support the continued focus on sustainability, protecting the general fund, and minimizing impacts to core services our residents rely on. However, I must express concern about one specific proposal, the addition of a new police dog, which would require removing a sworn officer from patrol. At a time when we are facing projected deficits, increased service demands, and staffing constraints, we cannot afford to shift critical frontline resources. Public safety is a top priority, but it must be approached strategically. Removing an officer from our streets to fund a canine program does not align with our fiscal reality or the broader community safety needs. I urge council to direct staff to prioritize efficient, people-focused investments and to reconsider any additions to the police department that reduce boots on the ground. Let's ensure every dollar serves the highest needs, especially during this critical planning period. Thank you. And that concludes public comment.
Mayor, if I could just provide some information to the council and to the public comments. So I know we didn't get into detail, so I didn't speak to what the detailed items that are in the budget. But I just want to note that there isn't a second canine officer included in the budget that we're bringing forward in 2 weeks. There is not. I don't know if that was clear when I said it. There is not that second canine unit. I understand the perspective. I think we have a similar perspective that we need to sort of make sure that our budget is sustainable and that we're taking care of priorities before we talk about any additions, across the board. So we'll bring that budget forward and we'll explain that, but it's not in the budget that's being proposed. We'll have more information on that at the detailed meeting in 2 weeks.
Great, thank you. So I will now close the public, comment section of the hearing. It is now 8:01. We have before us a recommendation to direct staff to incorporate any direction and return with the second budget workshop on May 19th, 2025. Is there anything that you all want to add, any direction to?
It's just going to be during the meeting. We'll get to that at the end of today when we talk about the next agenda. We're going to keep that agenda light so we can have like a workshop within the regular time, 6:30.
Great, thank you. My comment was about, is there any other direction that the council would like to give the staff in preparation for the next workshop? If not, is there a motion, can I get a motion in a second, sorry?
I move to approve the recommendations stated in the staff report.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion? Councilmember Gama?
So this is complicated stuff, and as we digest it, can we send questions to city manager to be addressed at the May 19th budget workshop?
Yes. We're planning to go pretty in-depth. There was a question earlier, I think somebody had asked about, what will be presented at that meeting. We were planning, it is very difficult to really show everything, but what we're planning to do is bring sort of what was reduced from the budget. So, in a good year, you start with your budget and you talk about what's being added. I think, not that it's a bad year, we're just trying to, look ahead and be careful. So we're going to start with these things are being reduced from the budget and then have that conversation with council of, whether to make any changes or not. So if there's questions about those, then we can make sure that we plan to explain all those, but you can send them and we'll make sure we are prepared for that. So.
Great, thank you. If there's nothing else, no comments, discussion, Madam Clerk, please take roll call.
Member Brown?
No comments.
Do you approve the recommendation?
Yes.
Member Commissioner Gama?
Yes.
Member Commissioner Hernandez?
Yes.
Member Commissioner Perez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Vice President Lopez?
Yes.
And Mayor Chair President McQueen Lejeune.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with Member Blackwell absent.
Great, thank you. This brings us to the end of the special joint meeting. We will now reconvene to the City Council regular meeting. The time is now 8:04.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay. All right, so we'll now move to the consent calendar for the City Council meeting. The consent calendar will be acted in one motion unless a council member would like to request item be pulled. Any items to be pulled? If not, can I get a motion and a second?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Great. We'll move on to item number 12, a public hearing. This is the annual development agreement compliance review for Emerald Perspective Cooperative Incorporated and finding of exemption from CEQA. Madam Clerk, do you have proof of publication as required by law and a complete file of reports and exhibits?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Will staff please present the report?
Yes, and Community and Economic Development Director Tony Stewart will take us through a presentation.
Hey, thank you, and good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council, staff, and audience. This is a development agreement annual review for Emerald Perspective, as you just mentioned. Back in June of last year, the City Council approved a series of amendments to our existing 18 development agreements with our cannabis businesses. And this is the first of the annual reviews since that June meeting. So, but further back, we've been discussing cannabis quite a bit in the last item. And back in 2016, the City Council, because they were facing a budget crisis at the time, opted to allow cannabis businesses to operate in the city as a source of revenue. And since the city does not have a cannabis tax in place, the development agreement was the tool that the council at the time established to ensure that the various cannabis businesses here in the city would pay their required obligated payments towards the city general fund, or the contractual payment, as it's called. The development agreements also include remedies that should the applicant default, and such a default would be, for instance, if the annual amount of the contractual payment dropped by 50% or more of a 3-year average, if any conditions of the related conditional use permits for the operation of each business were violated, or if there was a continuing or repetitive breach of the city's ordinances. And as a result of the default, the city could terminate the development agreement, modify it, or exercise a similar remedy. And as stated in each staff report that was presented to the City Council for consideration of a new cannabis business's application, the respective development agreements specifically required applicants to agree to the following. Pay that contractual payment of 5% for dispensaries, in this case, of their annual gross revenues on a regular basis, and this is less taxes paid, such as sales tax or now excise taxes, as we discussed back in June of last year. That they would maintain all books and records accurately and pay for annual audits, and it was down from 2 audits down to 1 audit annually, and this was the cost savings measure to help our businesses out. And this was per our June 24 amendments to the development agreements. And that they'd obtain a certificate of occupancy to open their businesses with 1 year of effective date of the agreement being put into place. In exchange for these provisions, the city would agree that through the development agreements, that the development rights in place at the time that the agreements were approved would be vested, with the exception of any non-conflicting laws or regulations. And so, again, the public benefits summary, the reason why the city was allowing these businesses to operate in here in the first place would be, again, to open the business with 1 year of the effective date of the agreement, provide a long-term source of employment opportunities and assisting the revitalization of the economic development base of this community, provide the city directly with additional revenue in the form of an increase in certain taxes, such as sales taxes and whatnot, provide additional monies for the general fund, again, that's that 5% payment, and provide certain community benefits, which are generally 1% of the annual gross revenues that are put towards organizations and events and whatnot here in the community. So with regard to Emerald Perspective, it is a dispensary. It's located at 100 West Pleasant Valley Road. They've been in business since April of 2019. And while they have been in compliance with past development agreement reviews, the city is currently out of compliance with their development agreement for the following. First of all, the lack of payment of 5% in gross revenues for the city's general fund. And this was for the months of November and December 2023, as well as from April 24 to present. Terms and condition number 12 of their development agreement states that the city requires this payment on a regular basis. And again, the primary purpose for the city to require this payment is for allowing the cannabis businesses to operate basically as a source of revenue for the general fund. And the lack of this payment to the city basically has a negative impact on our finances, as we've just discussed, and the ability to provide services to ensure the health and safety of the public. Since December 23, staff has made over 24 attempts to reach out to Emerald Perspective with regard to the amount owed to the city. Some of these, the finance department was successful in at least talking to somebody, but we're told that the business either claimed that they were owed money to the city, and/or they were being overcharged, or they ignored staff's outreach altogether. What documentation was provided to the city by the business was unsubstantiated, and requests from staff for the developer to provide proper documentation and backup data were also ignored. Second, due to the lack of the regular payments and the affiliated paperwork to prove otherwise, staff cannot determine whether or not the developer has been providing the city directly with additional revenue from increased taxes. And further, the developer has not paid for this year's annual business license tax. I say this year's, I mean 2024. Now we're coming up with 2025 shortly. Terms and conditions number 8 of the development agreement requires compliance with all existing development regulations in place at the time the agreement becomes effective. Our municipal code, sections 5003C and 5016, require that all businesses operating in the city pay their business license tax and have a business license in place. Again, this business does not at this time. Further, it cannot be determined if the revenue is being generated in the form of additional taxes as required by the agreement. Public benefits summary are occurring at this time. 3, the developer is out of compliance with several of the conditional use permits conditions of approval. The conditional use permit PHCU 844 was approved by the City Council to allow the operation of the dispensary back in April of 2018. Specifically, conditions 1, 4, 31, and 40 require the developer to comply with their project application and what was contained within it, as well as the plans. That they would comply with their certificate of approval as well as the development agreement, that employees wear visible identification cards, and that the developer will agree to the annual business reviews by city staff and outside consultant, HDL, respectively. HDL performs annual inspections of all of our businesses, generally in October. That occurred with this year in October with Emerald Perspective. And HDL, when they were there, found several violations of either city or state law, such as the business not having the required plans and documents on hand for the inspector to review, and the employees were not wearing proper identification. Staff follows up with letters to the businesses, whether to let them know that they are in compliance or if there are corrections that are needed. When staff reached out with the letter to the developer, we asked that the items all be corrected by November 30th. To date, the developer has not responded to the letter nor verified that any of these corrections have been made. So again, the business is in violation of their CUP. And terms and condition number 17 of the development agreement notes that this is consideration of default with their development agreement. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, in addition to not paying for the contractual payment, business license tax, the developer has also not paid for the past audit or inspection. And again, terms and condition number 17 notes the developer shall be in default if not in compliance with the CUP with regard to condition number 40 specifically. And this chart basically shows a breakdown of what is currently owed to the city by Emerald Perspective. The required 5% payment to the general fund, along with interest, totals $76,217 roughly. The remaining balance from the previous audit, not to mention the one coming up soon, but the previous one is over $7,000. The 2024 compliance inspection, which we just discussed, has not been paid for, and that's $1,250. Balance of penalties for late payments from October to December 2022 owe over $3,000. The past due business license tax is $1,642 roughly, for a total of $89,154.69. And as of today, with this development agreement review, there's another $1,680 for that fee, which brings the total owed to the city of $90,834.69. And this is all general fund revenue, or potential general fund revenue, I should say. So consequently, per the terms and conditions number 11 of the development agreement, the city council may opt to one of several alternatives. The first one here would be to demand full payment of all monies owed to the city by a certain date, i.e. 30 days from today. And if not paid in full within this period, revoke the developer's development agreement subject to the procedures set forth in the development agreement and the city's adopted requirements and procedures. And should the city council so choose this option, this would also begin the process of revoking the business's conditional use permit. Keep in mind they don't have a business license on file right now, so that would not be subject to revocation because it would be a moot point. Alternatively, the city council may allow a one-time payment plan with fixed terms and conditions, requiring a payment of not less than $12,000 immediately. And that would be to cover all of the outstanding annual audit, inspection, development, review fees, as well as the business tax within 30 days of this hearing, with the remainder of the payments to be completed within no greater than 6 months. The agreement for the payment plan must then be entered into within 30 days of this hearing. And the payment plan would be based on the unaudited gross receipts, so basically what we know of today. Upon completion of the financial audit that will be coming up within the next few months here, and that will be for all of our cities here, all of our businesses in the city, I should say, a true-up adjustment will be calculated based on the audit results. If there are additional revenues owed to the city, the amount of additional revenues will then be due within 30 days of a completion of the audit. And these amounts will not be included in the payment plan. The business would also be able to continue to operate subject to complying with all terms and conditions of that payment plan, or the city council may take other additional action as may be desired. Since the developer has repeatedly ignored staff's request to produce the information necessary to validate their claims of how much is owed to the city, or has ignored staff's outreach altogether with regard to paying for all of the fees that I've discussed previously, since the city has not, since the developer also has not paid the required annual business license tax, is also operating in violation of the conditional use permit, which is a violation of the development agreement. At this time, it is recommended that you, the city council, find the Emerald Prospective is in violation of their development agreement and exercise option 1, which is to demand a full payment within 30 days or move forward with starting revocation of the development agreement and conditional use permit. That concludes my presentation with regard to, other than to mention that, of course, the project is exempt from CEQA. We have to mention that. Fiscal impact, again, is over $90,800 due to the city's general fund at this time. And the recommendation then would be to open the public hearing and take testimonial and documentary evidence, close the hearing and consider this evidence, adopt a resolution determining that Emerald Prospective Cooperative Incorporated is out of compliance with their development agreement, and make a determination the project is exempt from CEQA, and take such additional related action that may be desirable, including determination of which course of action to take regarding to the subject business's default of the development agreement per the options noted in our staff report. And I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes. Is anyone from Emerald Perspective here?
I believe so, according to Georgiana. I have not met anybody in person tonight.
So we'd like to hear from Emerald Perspective. I'd like to ask some questions to them.
Can we ask questions? Do you have any questions of staff? Let's do that first.
Well, not really, because they gave all the information that I have, and we need additional information from the actual business owner.
Okay, so we're in a hearing, so we'll follow the process, go through public comments, and then at discussion and comments, we'll do that piece.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Councilmember Gama.
Thank you. Are we only able to talk to the recognized owner, Mr. Mead Whippo Jr.? In other words, is anyone authorized to speak on behalf of the organization?
There's nothing that says that they can't. We don't have to hear it from necessarily the business owner specifically.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Stewart, for the presentation and all your efforts to collect this revenue. Can I see option 1 again, please? And I want to know, does that preclude us from collecting on the entire amount? Okay. So we go with option 1. Do we eventually, can we eventually go after the full amount? Is that the intent?
That is the intent. Option 1 would be to collect the entire amount within 30 days.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I do.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So it shows November and December 2023, there was money owed. What was that exact dollar amount?
I would have to defer to our finance department. I'm not sure exactly what those
Okay.
two particular months are. What I gave you were
It was in
all
the
of
slides.
Yeah, the amount in the slide was not just those 2 months, but everything owed for the 5% because it was those 2 months as well as from April 24 on to present. And that total amount with interest is $76,216.87.
So what was the average monthly money that what we would normally get? Do you know?
Well, I sort of do, but we don't usually disclose the details on those for the security and safety of each business.
So they're in violation of not having a business license tax right currently.
That is correct.
And then something that was so simple as the IDs, they never responded to our request.
That is correct.
That's all I got.
Great. I'd like to just pose a question to our city attorney. Can we take questions from the organization now and then go to public comments, or should we go to public comments first?
I would go to public comment first.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Any other questions before we do that? Great, thank you. I will now open the public hearing and take public comments. The time is now 8:22. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments?
Yes, we have one from Emerald's Perspective, Walter Gauss.
Hi, Council. My name is Walter Gauss. I'm an assistant manager at Emerald Perspective. I'm here to ask for a 60-day extension for me and my coworkers, as we have not been notified until recently. Mead Whippo, the owner, has been dealing with his wife's cancer and needed a full-time job. So his full attention has not been at the shop, and he has not been in as much as he has used to be into our shop. He has notified us that his lawyer, Matthew Shriller, has contacted the city of Port Hueneme regarding this matter. Again, we are just asking for a 60-day extension for us as employees so we could figure out how we could get the needed funds for the city to continue operating. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
No more public comments, but do
Okay.
you want the applicant to stay up here while they do the questions?
Sir, are you prepared to answer some questions that the council may have?
Yeah, again.
To the extent you can?
Yeah.
Okay.
Terrific, thank you.
Should the public comments, should the hearing stay open?
The hearing should stay open.
Great, thank you. I just would like to ask one question, if I may. So are all of you employees?
Yes.
So no one with decision-making authority is here?
I'm the one that's been making all the decision-makings for the last pretty much year and a half.
Okay, and
I
what,
wasn't advised to, I basically just been keeping his doors open.
okay, so, and what is your role?
I run the whole store.
What is your, could you identify yourself, please?
Andrea Reyes.
And then can you guys speak in the mic, please?
It's
Thank
Andrea
you.
Reyes.
I'm the general manager.
General manager, okay, thank you. Okay, any question? Go, Councilmember Perez.
Well, I'm reluctant. Is there anyone really here with any authority to answer the questions that we have? Like, we'd want to know what happened, what got off track, what, you know, they built up so much past due, why wasn't any payment made? You know, is anybody available to even answer those questions?
Yeah, well, Meade pretty much left us to come here because he's just dealing with other life things. And basically, he told us that there is some discrepancy against something about a payment that's owed and whatnot. That I'm not too sure about what it is. He's supposed to be giving me more paperwork from his attorney to show me everything, but he said to ask for like a 60-day extension because we are trying to come up with something like to give you guys an upfront payment so we could start a payment plan to get back into compliance just to keep our shop open.
Well, because I understand that he thinks that we owe them money, but still, I mean, the contract states that you pay a certain amount. He went into the agreement understanding all the things that he had to do, and it doesn't sound like he's done any of them. So I'm not sure how much we can get out of this without really having the person here to answer those questions.
If I can interject just one comment. I did speak with a Mr. Schiller late last week. He contacted me either Thursday or Friday. He did not identify himself as an attorney. My understanding was that he was an accountant, and I essentially informed him the amount that was owed by the dispensary, and then there was some issue about a $9,000 credit that was potentially owed from the city to the dispensary. And I informed Mr. Schiller that that credit cannot be confirmed until it has been confirmed by our outside auditors, and that my understanding and information was that the dispensary was not responding to any of the outreach from the outside auditors. So the outside auditors weren't able to confirm the amount of the credit. The credit was $9,000, but what was owed to the city is $90,800.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I have nothing.
Okay, Councilmember Gama.
Yes, I would ask that you extend our condolences to Mr. Meade and his wife in going through cancer. We understand it's very difficult. However, as you understand, we have a budget, we have a city to run, and we need to have a payment, and we need to have cooperation. So we are in a very difficult situation here, as you learned.
Yeah, we get that. That's why we're here, because we're trying to come up with some kind of agreement where we can give you guys some kind of payment.
Well, the thing that we need is a massive payment. I mean, I would say if someone was able to,
Decided that yet.
yeah, well, but clearly you haven't. There's an amount owed, and can you vouch to say that you have resources to pay us, or what?
Well, not the full 90 grand, but like if we could come to some kind of payment agreement where we can make payments every month, I'm sure we could give you a good chunk, like at least 10 to 12,000, just to get it going.
Do you have any other questions?
That's what we're here trying to do.
Are you authorized to make an offer on this outstanding debt?
Yes,
And your offer is?
that we could come up with some kind of agreement within the next 30 days to make you guys some sort of payment to get on a payment plan.
Okay. Councilmember Hernandez.
Any questions?
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, so does he want to, does your owner want to stay open?
Basically, he says yes, that we're just trying, but we are going through like financial difficulties with the economy and everything. So right now, like our overhead isn't very good. Basically, we have enough to pay rent, have to pay our employees, have to pay our bills. And I mean, we're struggling. I mean, all the shops are struggling.
Okay, so as general manager, who pays the sale tax?
Well, that was Meade's doing, but he's gonna start giving me authority to like get in contact with you guys, because he said a lot of this is because he was not in contact with people. So now he told me to come up to the meeting and basically talk, and
he would give me authority to be able to be the contact point for you guys. So if you guys needed somebody to contact, you could contact me, and then I could give you answers to what's going on rather than being ignored.
So were you aware of the violations?
Not of this, no.
So none of,
I barely found this out like within the last 2 weeks.
okay, so you guys are out of compliance with your business sales tax, and just your audit.
Yeah.
So you were not aware, as a general manager, aware of any of this?
I was not aware of being, like, the cities being out of compliance. I was aware of, like, the employees when they didn't have their badges that one day. What it was we had hired 2 new employees during that time, and their badges just hadn't come in yet. But all that had been corrected.
But why didn't you guys notify the city that?
I thought me did, because he was the one that was handling things like that at that time. At that time, I was just the buyer. Like, I was just,
So as a general manager, though, the sales tax, like the business license should be posted, right?
yeah, well, the business license, from what I understand, it was paid last Friday.
Is that true?
That was for the business license.
I have not been told that yet. I don't know if our finance department knows that. They take that normally, but if it was just this past Friday, no, I wouldn't have known that yet.
Okay, so it just seems like the owner is really not being faithful to the business. I mean, he's been letting you guys run with this, and
Yeah.
it's unfortunate because you guys are not in compliance. That's what it basically boils down to. You guys are not following the rules.
Well, we're trying to figure out what we need to do to be back in compliance, because the city stuff, I was not aware of at all.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any other questions? Just wanted, so the owner, is he local?
He's in Thousand Oaks,
Thousand Oaks.
Camarillo area, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, so we will now close the public comment period. I will now, let's see, it is now 8:32. We have before us our recommendations. Can we go back to the recommendation page so I don't have to read them again?
Sure.
We have our recommendations.
You want the options or just the actual recommendations?
Let's go to the options.
Okay, so there we're on the 2 pages. This was the first option, again, option 1, which was the one-time payment within 30 days. And if not paid, then the city council would move forward with the procedures to revoke the development agreement and conditional use permit. Then option 2 would be the payment plan with the down payment of $12,000 minimum, and then have that agreed to within 30 days of this evening. And then to have that all paid in full within 6 months. And this, again, would be based on the unaudited gross receipts. And if the audit, the true-up, calculated more, then those payments would be due within 30 days of the audit, and they would not be part of the payment plan. And then the third would be any other option that you may want to exercise this evening.
Okay, so we have the recommendations and we have the options before us. May I get a first and a second? A motion and a second?
Could I ask a question about one of them?
Sure.
So if we were to agree to the second one with putting terms that, you said it has to be paid within 30 days. What was it? 30 days, the first payment, and you have to make a plan, correct? And then the full payment has to be made within 6 months. What was the rest of it? Is that the gist of it?
That would be the gist of it, correct?
Can we add something, if we wanted to do 2, give them an option and add something in there that as soon as they were already out of compliance with that first portion of it, then we could bring it back for another decision?
Can I just ask a question really quick, if you
Yeah,
don't
of course.
mind? Can we come up with a number 3 or number 4?
Yes.
You can do whatever we want.
Can
yeah.
come up, okay, so we don't have to just 2 or 1, we can just, if there's something else that you want to at least put out there, then do that.
I'd like to suggest or make a motion that we we ask for 30% of the total due within 30 days, and then a aggressive payment plan thereafter. However, I mean, that's, my motion is to show good faith that you're gonna make a significant reduction in the debt and then an aggressive repayment plan.
If there's no second, is there another motion? Because I didn't hear a second on that. Is there another motion? Anyone? If not, I have one.
I would like to hear yours, Mayor.
Yeah, and so I have heard the general manager talk about 60 days. And so I would like to request the 12,000 immediately and then allow the 60 days to pay the balance of what's due. Since it sounds like they asked for 60 days. If there's no second, is there another motion? Go ahead.
I wanted to ask staff if that was something they had considered and if they think that's a feasible option.
And what about the balance? Okay. I'm just not confident.
Yes.
I'm not confident at a payment arrangement, so that's where I stand personally.
Can we discuss?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I come up with an arrangement? Can I make a motion?
You can, because they both have failed, so go ahead.
So I would like to make a motion that, A, they get in compliance first. Have a one-time payment of $12K immediately. And 3 payments in the next 6 months that covers the remaining amount. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any discussion, any further question, comments, discussion?
I have one.
Okay.
So what do we mean by compliance? What does that actually mean? What will they have to do to be?
Well, they had, so they don't have a business license, A, that we know of since the staff report. They were out of compliance with the badging, and it sounds like they made those corrections, but didn't notify the city. And Mr. Stewart, did I miss anything else?
Couple of things.
The badges?
Right, you just mentioned the badges. So it would be basically compliance with the conditional use permit conditions of approval. That's what you're asking for them to be in compliance with. That includes the business license, the badging,
The auditing.
documentations, and whatnot.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, discussion. So
I just
if
want
I can just, will you just summarize again what you just commented to our Mayor Pro Tem? You
Sure.
talked about being in compliance with, and I just want everybody to hear that.
Right.
What does that mean?
Okay. So they would be, what compliance would, how it would be defined would be that they would have a business license in effect. They would basically pay for the current one. And then because we're coming up close to our new, they would get a new one. They would also verify that all of the deficiencies found during the inspection, such as the lack of the paperwork and plans, as well as the identification, were corrected. So basically, those conditions of approval would be complied with.
And let me ask you, based on timelines, how long it takes for those items to get done, how long should it take for them, for the organization to be compliant with those things?
I would say that within 30 days. I mean,
Within 30 days.
We just heard that they may already be, but if not, then there's no reason why they can't be completely compliant within 30 days. These are not big asks. And also, at that point, then we've got the $12,000 that we had also mentioned that were requested with option one to be also paid within 30 days.
That would be
Great.
good faith.
And I think that I have an amended motion, just want to add one thing, so exactly what our Mayor Pro Tem said, but after the 6-month period, if it's not done, to move to the revoking.
If I may.
Is there, can I get a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, great. Did you have something?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're on this motion, can we take the motion? I'm sorry, this is discussion time, go ahead.
I just want to be brutally honest. Sales are down. We just heard that. I don't know. I just don't see the business surviving in the current environment. And, you know, $90,000 is a lot of money that's owed to the city. And we have a fiduciary responsibility to do our end. And, you know, nothing personal. I mean, I want you to have your jobs, but I don't have any confidence that we're going to be paid the way we should be paid. And so I can't vote for a payment plan that drags us out for 6 more months. I'm sorry, but.
Okay.
So I have a comment to that. Either way, either they're able to make the payment, we'll get our 12,000. Either way, I mean, they're going to owe the money. So either able to do it or they're not. It's not going to really affect us any more than what it already is. But my question is, to the business, do you have another, Emerald's perspective, do you have another business that you're operating in, like Oxnard or Ventura? Is Port Hueneme the only location?
Okay.
So, just to be clear, when I said 6 months, so that would be 3 payments within 6 months. So, so every 2 months, you know, they're gonna make a payment.
But I heard the
So
number
that way, if
12,000.
they default on month
Right.
2,
Yes.
then we immediately we
Got
move
it.
to come back to the council.
Okay, is that clear, or do we need to put that on the record again?
I think that's clear.
It's clear?
Okay, so we're not taking mayor's amended motion, it just Mayor Pro Tem
Well,
Lopez.
I think I wasn't crystal clear on
Yes.
my.
Yeah.
So that it's clear on the record, can you please state your motion again, add the 6-month, the comment that I made, but make sure you're clear about paying?
I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you make the motion because.
Okay, I'll make the motion. And so I move that we allow Emerald to come into compliance in the 30 days, make the immediate $12,000 payment, and between the 30 days and the next 5 months, they should make 3 payments, that at the end of the 6-month period, we would have received all the due funds. Is that correct? And if not, at any point, any stage, so we can get this, I guess we have to get this written further, at any stage of the non-compliance to our decision, we should move to revocation.
Do you need a second for that, or is she
Yes.
just clarifying the
No, just
original?
another second.
So
Everybody got it?
And I just want to also clarify that includes adopting the resolution and making the determination that it's exempt from CEQA.
Yes.
Okay, I'll
Thank you.
second that.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Can I make
City
one?
manager? Yeah.
Yeah, can I make one suggestion?
Yes.
I'll just say I feel terrible for
Yeah.
you all here that you have to deal with this, because I don't think it's your guys' fault.
Mhm,
And I think the council probably feels the same way, and I don't think it's the situation any of us want. But the biggest concern I have is that the property owner is not here. Property owner hasn't
Right.
told us anything. Our business owner hasn't confirmed he's willing to do anything. I think my suggestion would be, as part of that motion, that the public hearing be continued for 30 days. And if the business owner takes the steps needed and signs the compliance agreement, then when we can report back in 30 days that they're in compliance. But if they're not, because I haven't heard from the business owner yet, and I don't really have a lot of faith right now.
So that's a new motion.
That, well, it's
amend
not,
it.
it's the mechanics of this motion, is that at 30 days, if we don't have an agreement, we continue this public hearing, so it comes back to council. We'll report if they've taken care of things or if not, and then there could be a decision made at that day.
So after 30 days, we should expect how much?
It would be the $12,000 and significant progress on getting into compliance with all of the requirements. And so then at that point, council could say, okay, you know, you made progress and we'll give you the 6 months to make payments, or you haven't made progress and we have to act. And I will just note there that, just as a point, we do have, almost all of our businesses are in compliance. So I just want to reflect that, you know, this is one thing that gets lost sometimes, it is a fairness to all businesses conversation where other businesses are following the rules and are making the payments, and so it's unfair to let one business not do those things. So I just want to make that point, because it's not something that anybody likes to do, but it's something that we have to do to be fair to everyone. So giving that 30-day period, continuing the public hearing, if they've done, Mr. Whipple has done what they said he would do, then we'll be able to approve the agreement and move on.
I could support that.
Great. Madam Clerk, can we have a vote, please?
Yes. Councilmember Goma.
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Perez.
You were looking right at me, too. Yes.
And Mayor McQueen Lejeune.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Question though. So I see our city attorney and city manager discussing.
Yes. So and what we were discussing is the council meeting is on June 2nd. That's the one a month from now. It's technically less than 30 days, so I was asking, do we need to have the motion say come back on June 2nd? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to amend the motion.
To
return
continue
to-
the public hearing till June 2nd.
Okay, return to public hearing June 2nd, 2025.
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Great. Can we take a roll call, please?
Councilmember Goma.
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
Councilmember Perez.
Yes, here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Yes.
And Mayor McQueen Lejeune.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Council, I'd like to take a point of preference, personal preference, please. Step out for a second.
I need to step up. I'll hold my question.
Are we taking that 5-minute break?
We want to take a break?
5 minute.
All right, welcome back. We'll reconvene to the city council meeting, and we'll move to business item number 13, electric motorized vehicles on Hueneme Beach Pier. Will staff please present the report?
Yes, and our Deputy City Manager, Charles Peretz, will be presenting this report.
Good evening, Mayor and council members, member of the public, and staff. So item 13 on the agenda pertains to a discussion about electronic and motorized vehicles at the pier. The April 7th City Council meeting included a public comment pertaining to the operation of motorized electric bikes on the pier. And this agenda is presented in response to council's request for a future agenda item to discuss such activity and consider options to address the concerns that were expressed. The purpose of the presentation is to provide information about existing signage, relevant municipal codes, and ultimately to provide council the opportunity to provide direction. Last year, in response to community members' concerns about a wide variety of activities at the beach, the city installed new rule signs. The new signs, which are pictured here, include an extensive listing of activities that are prohibited at Hueneme Beach. As noted in the staff report, consolidated rule signs allow for consistency in messaging, decreased sign clutter, reduced costs, and they provide centralized locations where members of the public can find information about various rules. So in a review of the municipal code, there are no specific code sections that address motorized vehicle activity on the pier. However, there are two code sections that relate to the issue of wheeled vehicles at the beach and the pier. The first is section 4301, and that prohibits riding, pushing, or pulling wheeled vehicles on the pier. The other section, 4212, which is referenced on the sign, prohibits riding, pushing, and pulling wheeled vehicles for human conveyance on unpaved areas at the beach park. While these two reference wheeled vehicles, neither define the term wheeled vehicle. In summary of this issue, last year, the city installed new beach signs that address a multitude of prohibited activities in the beach and the pier area. The code includes prohibitions related to wheeled vehicles, but does not define that term. And staff doesn't think that the intention was for the city to prohibit wheeled vehicles such as strollers and wagons. Yeah, there is a provision in the municipal code that allows for wheeled vehicles that are used to transport disabled persons. Staff is recommending that the city produce a flyer prohibiting electronic and motorized vehicles from the pier and place it in the kiosk that lies adjacent to the pier. And additionally, as staff does periodically, the suggestion is that staff would take an inventory of the signs at the beach, identify any areas where signage is deficient, and add the rule signs that have already been installed as necessary. That provides an overview of the issue, and we are available for questions that the council may have.
Are there any questions? Hold on just a minute. Go ahead, Councilmember Gama.
So is the California legislature, are they beginning to recognize, I think the motorized bikes that we're talking about are basically motorcycles. And are they going to, is there any pending legislation that's going to make it necessary to register said vehicles? Because I think there's a miles per hour ceiling, but I think because we're kind of getting in this area and we need help from the state. So my question is the state doing anything to address these electric bikes, which go very fast, and we see them all over the roads? We see them in intersections, at the stoplights and so forth?
I can't speak to specific legislation, but I can tell you what has been discussed and what is proposed is not e-bike specific. It's actually differentiated in the power or the wattage of the bikes. So bikes that are able to travel at certain speeds and have certain wattages and powers are designated more as motor vehicles, and motorized bikes that have less wattage and have lesser speed capabilities are not. So you get to a point where it does have to be registered with the Department of Motor Vehicles and is appropriate for streets, but there are many e-bikes that are not in that category that would not be subject to registration with the Department of Motor Vehicles. So you referenced motorcycles before, and that would be something that would rise to the level of more of a motor vehicle rather than an e-bike.
I know, but I see these two kids that come to Miranda Park on these electric bikes look like motorcycles, and they literally could burn out and send dirt and grass a-flying, and they jump and they do all these crazy things. So I'm wondering, because they're clearly vehicles or bicycles that could go very, very fast. So I think what you're saying is that they're not recognized as how do we, because I think what the complaint was, correct me if I'm wrong, was that some of these bikes were zipping down the pier. Fast. Yeah, so.
Yeah, if I could add to that I think it was last year. I know they've tried, but the state has a couple of times talked about legislation. I think they sort of differentiated it as what do they call the Class 2 bicycles? So the Class 1 goes up to 20 miles an hour, and then Class 2's in excess of that, I think. And so the state has talked a couple times about requiring things like insurance and registration, but it hasn't been approved at this point, and I think it's failed a couple of times. So.
And then what about enforcement? Are we?
Well, that was my question.
Yeah. What are we doing? How are we going to enforce?
Are we imposing a fine, such as for violation? Do we have anything that will stick and make it painful?
The challenge for us kind of goes back to the budget discussion right now of, essentially we have 4 officers on duty at any one time, and so do we want to use that resource at the pier, or do we respond when called when there's, problematic behavior, but we don't have somebody stationed at the pier.
Right, no, I wouldn't want that, but if they see it and it happens and there's
Right.
somebody,
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is if people see it, call us. I think this is accurate. I know we were checking, but I don't believe we've gotten a call on this in the last year, for example. So, just as a reminder, there is if people are seeing it, call us and call the police. But we, so far, when that request came forward, the request was, brought to the council meeting, and so sort of big picture wise, we're saying, well, let's make sure we put some signage specific to this, but if we get the calls and we're able to respond to those calls, then that's something that can be enforced. But we don't have any plan right now to have resources stationed there to just be looking for this issue.
so I understood and I agree with that portion of it, but just in case there is an officer there, because they do make calls out to the pier, is there a fine related to getting a citation for riding a motorized vehicle on the pier?
Okay, I'll let Charles answer that.
Yes, I can't tell you what the amount is, but it would be a violation of the municipal code and subject to an administrative infraction.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's that was the code section that we went through a moment ago, is that any wheeled vehicle other than a wheelchair, right, is technically.
Yeah, I believe it says a wheelchair or other device used to transport a disabled person.
Yeah, and like we said, we wouldn't plan to enforce that because we don't think it was the intent when it was passed. We don't plan to enforce it against somebody pushing a stroller. But if somebody's out there, terrorizing people and somebody calls us, that we have the tools so that the police could respond to that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure what we're doing here is we're not really amending the city ordinance at all. We're just calling out the don't ride your wheeled vehicle on the pier.
That's correct. This is an opportunity to provide education and information to the public about existing violations.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, so do we make our own signs?
Yes.
Okay, so we have the ability to make a new sign in-house.
Oh, so we created the sign that was illustrated, but we do, we have somebody make the sign, the city pays for the signs to be made.
Okay, so my question is if, the little soccer carts that people push and, they're loading up all their fishing gear. So you're telling me that's not allowed on the pier? Because you're pushing it.
So that's the conversation we're having. Technically, it can be interpreted that would be a violation of this code section. And unless the council directs us otherwise, it would not be our intent to enforce that as a violation of the code. But it would be our intent to use this section to prohibit electric motorized vehicles.
And so can I ride my beach cruiser on the pier?
Technically, it's a violation of the code. And so that goes back to if you're doing it and you're not bothering anyone and nobody calls us, then you're not, there's no one to respond to it, but technically it's a violation of the code.
Okay. So, couple things. I would, the recommendation of signage specifically for this, I would agree with. I just lost my train of thought here. The electric motorized vehicles. So your recommendation is to have specific signage for this, because it's very hard to see that little one thing. Like, I don't think we're using our social media arm to actually distribute what can be what's allowed on that pier, what's allowed on the beach, like we should. We should have a reoccurring post that gives the regulations on this, so that we are at least being proactive, not reactive, like we're acting right now. That's all I have.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so I guess I'll follow up and say, yeah, this is kind of the thing that, I've been talking about ordinances, right? So one day you'll have one person that is purposefully calling the police because the ordinance is not being followed, right? And so based on what our city manager just said, someone can actually do that, and the police will need to come and then provide them a ticket, I imagine, if it's the ordinance. So do we need to do something with the ordinance so that it's more clear? Because I was reading and I thought, I see people come out for the movie and they have their carts with the now beach wheels that they haven't already had. So technology has changed, right, to take their stuff on the beach, but really, based on the ordinance, that's against the ordinance. And so it's really confusing for me. And it says no wheeled vehicles. And I actually went out and looked and said, okay, what really is a vehicle? And really, I went to look for it today and said, okay, what's a vehicle? And it's anything that carries something, really. People.
Ice chest?
Real guppy supplies. So I just think we can do better as it relates to.
Be more specific.
Yeah, being more specific.
When I was a mayor,
Because I don't want to get a ticket and then you don't get a ticket and you
Right.
went later the same day, but the people didn't call the police on you. They
Right.
called the police on me.
So like when I was mayor, a kid got bit by a dog that was running around on the beach and got facial stitches. So suddenly, we're being made aware that no dogs on the beach. Well, everybody has a dog on the beach. Well, no, the ordinance. And so, I don't know where we go from here, but, and I know that our city manager, I've heard him say this, don't want things that we don't plan on enforcing, but at the same time, clearly when an injury, it all, you know, it's all fun and games until somebody gets hurt. And so I think that bigger conversation is where we have to go, is like, you know, because if someone gets hurt, suddenly we're saying, well, you weren't supposed to be there and you're going to get a ticket.
Okay, any other questions?
If I could just add to that, the last paragraph of the staff report, we did sort of speak to, if that's a concern, that one approach could be that council sort of send that issue to the Citizens Advisory Commission to review, but also do it in a public meeting where there can be public input, because I do think that there are a lot of opinions on this topic, on, you know, even just one portion, you know, of it. Should, you know, probably the biggest question that I get most frequently is, do we allow dogs on the beach? Should we allow dogs on the beach? Should we allow them on this side? Should we allow them on that side? Should we allow them, you know, all that stuff. And I think sending it to the Citizens Advisory Commission and asking them to review the sections and have that public conversation, and then sort of create recommendations of what the updates could be. Because I think maybe to answer your question is, like, for us, we assume that the council, when this ordinance was adopted, didn't want us to issue citations to a mother with a stroller. But, you know, I don't know what the story was. I don't know if, you know, a mother with a stroller had run somebody over, or, you know. But I think it's safe to say that probably didn't happen. We don't think that was the case, but we don't know why the rule was specifically formulated, what it was intended to address. We just know that it was written very broad and now applies to a lot. And so, you know, I don't ever like having our staff have to kind of make the judgment call out there and say, well, it's against the rules, but, you know, but I don't think it's meant to be against the rules. So clarity is better. I think I also kind of weigh that with, you know, it's like at this point we have essentially one complaint. And so it's like, you know, how much of an effort do we go through to address one complaint? But if that beach conversation continues to come up, and there's always sort of like a, you know, a disagreement about what's allowed, what's not, and what should be, that could be an item that's sent to the Citizens Advisory Commission for them to make recommendations.
Mayor, I have a further comment on that line of thinking, though. We're not looking at the other side of this, where we start getting into the conversation of enforcement. Do we really want to start creating negative police interactions with people with dogs, where the police's requirement is you issue a citation, you have to sign that citation. Their rule is, and it's the law for police officers, if they don't sign the citation, they have to arrest you. So are we really going to have that interaction happening with somebody violating, not signing a citation over a dog, and now we have a negative interaction with a police officer that could lead to other things, somebody not wanting to be arrested? So we have to think about all the things that we're creating out of this conversation, that we could be going down that dark hole.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Yeah, I'm going down this list of rules and regulations, and all these things are happening with, they're not being enforced. I mean, it's really, it comes to a point where people have to self-police on these rules, because it's just, I think it's ridiculous for us to expect that police are really going to enforce this, and I don't think it's a good use of their time. People just have to understand the rules and follow them.
Are these genuine rules of the road for the beach, or is it, could we just do the old Pirates of the Caribbean guidelines type?
They're all part of the ordinance.
I mean, maybe that's something we could wrestle with, like, you know, we're not gonna, the dog thing though, again, because that's kind of like the extreme. Somebody has a dog and the dog's running around and bites a kid in the face. I mean, that's not good, right? But then again, we all agree that we don't have the resources to be policing the beach.
And we don't want to be.
And we don't want to be, correct. So maybe guidelines, ordinances, I just don't understand why we have mosquitoes flying around at night, but anyways, it's a moth. I'm done.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So, like, I think motorized vehicles are important too on the pier and require the same emphasis as a dog. So I think this is valid. And I do like the recommendation that we kick this down to the Citizens Advisory Commission. Is there a way also when we're actually doing lifeguards to have some, not an enforcement policy, but a general information policy where they can go instruct citizens on the do's and don'ts of the beach?
Yeah, last year we did a couple of things, and it's actually in line with what you said before, is basically before the summer when we were we knew everybody was starting to think about going to the beach. We did a social media campaign on sort of the rules, and then there was a big focus because at that time we had a group of residents asking us to help educate, including surf riders. They asked us to help educate about the dogs on leash issue. So we actually did get, Surfrider gave both our police officers and our lifeguards their brochure on about why dogs shouldn't, why they can't be at the beach. And then the lifeguards and officers when they did beach patrol and the lifeguards when they're out there were part of the educational process and, actually would tell people, here's some information. So I think that was a good approach. That was actually pretty simple because Surfriders already has the brochures and they brought them to us and we just kind of helped get them out. So we don't quite have that for the e-bike issue. So that would be something, we could definitely do messaging on it. It's just, we don't have a ready-made brochure for it. So
I have a motion.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I'm going to make a motion that we direct this to the Citizens Advisory Commission to review to come up with recommendations on the signage enforcement and everything to do with public safety on the beach. Electric motor vehicles.
Yeah, and do the sign stating electric motorized vehicles are not allowed.
Because everything's a broad term.
Yeah, everything's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everything's everything.
Does anybody
so-
have a motion?
No, that's
I have
good.
a question for our city attorney. Is there a way to move these rules to just suggestions as opposed to codified in an ordinance? Because we do put ourselves in this position well, why'd you pass the ordinance if you're not going to enforce the rule?
Well, you could direct that staff come back with an amended ordinance. And the ordinance is as it is. I don't know, I wasn't around when that particular ordinance was drafted. You could direct that we amend the ordinance to address some of these other issues that we've been discussing tonight. Or we can perhaps do that upon recommendations from the Citizens Advisory Commission. We could do that now or do it after they've come back with their proposals or recommendations.
yeah, and I think if I can add to that, just to answer to kind of get back to the basic of your question is, I think what you're saying is something similar to what we do in some other parks is we have administrative guidelines and administrative policies. And so I'll say how you could do it, but I'll also say, I think I would tell you we probably shouldn't do it, but I'll say how you do it is what you could do is you could revoke that ordinance and then basically say that, the city manager can create administrative policies that say, you should not do these things. But the problem and the reason why I wouldn't suggest that is because then if you do have somebody that goes out and just, purposely rides a motorcycle up and down the pier, we can't write them a ticket. And so that's really the challenge here. I think that's why this happens the way it does is the code is written for the one person who just goes way over the top. And when we catch them, we can write them a ticket. But it's not meant, and I think this is where the conversation with the resident who brought this forward is, it's not meant for us to go out and write tickets to everybody who, you know, the wheel of their stroller touches the pier. That's not what the intent of it is. But the mayor's point, it doesn't say that in the code. So that's sort of where, you know, that challenge is. So, I think maybe that answers the question of, that's why at the end of the day, there's an ordinance on it, and why just guidelines, the risk with guidelines is you can't actually do something about the offender.
Extreme.
But in the case of a catastrophic injury, then, you know, these things will work against us, these facts. I mean, like if
having an ordinance and not enforcing it. Is that what
correct,
you're saying?
correct.
It would be on the individual who broke the law and injured someone else.
Yeah,
Say
but
you had
deep
say you had,
pockets.
Yeah, it won't stop somebody from suing the city, but, and Joan could speak better to this, but when you have a law and somebody breaks it and somebody's injured, they are per se, right?
Responsible
They're per
party.
se respon-
Negligence per se.
They're
yeah.
per se responsible for it.
Yeah.
There's no obligation on the part of the municipality to really enforce any of its rules, because there are all sorts of statutory immunities
Correct.
that protect the municipality, just for this, what we're talking about here.
So are we opening up a can of worms per se by sending it over to the CAC?
Maybe.
I don't
Are we
think so.
bringing attention
Well,
to
are we
something?
giving them the work that we should be doing, I think is.
That's probably the better question.
That's a question for council. It's not opening a can of worm. Well, it's not legally opening a can of worms. It might be politically opening a can of worms.
It's passing the buck.
Yeah, but it's not legally opening.
And I
opening
think
up
you
a
might
can.
have some city commissioners who would need to recuse themselves because they live close to the beach. So that could be problematic.
Well, you only have to recuse yourself
We'd have
if
to
you
look
have a
at it,
financial.
whether there's a conflict there or not.
Yeah, but I do
Yeah,
have
I
a
live-
comment to hopefully help us move along, because we've talked about definitions, about what's a wheeled vehicle, and I'm looking at the list of definitions. I would like to, whatever motion we decide on, to include that staff go back and define wheeled vehicles. And maybe there's a difference between wheeled vehicles and motorized vehicles, but maybe the list of definitions needs to be updated, modified.
Okay. Could help.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, that's a motion, in addition to the recommendations that are here on the staff report. Did you make a motion?
Yeah, he did.
I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll second Councilmember Hernandez's motion.
Okay, great.
So the recommendation in the staff report was the sign,
Mhm.
right?
Yes,
So, okay.
the sign, and then ask staff to update the,
And then, yeah, staff to update definition of wheeled vehicle.
Yeah.
So those two items.
Yeah.
Okay.
so I don't see a need to go back to the Citizens Advisory Commission?
No.
No, okay.
Okay, so,
Let's start here.
can we make sure we include number one? So our,
Received.
Madam Chair doesn't have to tell me to come read it over. The first one was receive information regarding status of electromotorized vehicles. And then the other ones that you.
Direct staff to create sign starts
Yeah.
stating electric motorized vehicles are not allowed, and then make sure that electric motorized vehicles are defined in the ordinance, as well as wheeled
Wheeled
vehicles.
vehicles.
I second. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. We will now move to the city manager comments and reports.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, Assistant City Manager.
Okay, so we have a couple of items we wanted to provide updates or reports on. And I think first was highlighting Saturday's events. And so I know we actually had a good turnout, especially for the tour. I wasn't sure how many people would turn out, but we actually had pretty big tour groups. So we had our official ribbon cutting of the playground at Bubbling Springs Park all of the park amenities are open at this time. The soccer fields are opening for like general public use, and we're working towards getting some processes in place for that to sort of expand to some of the field rental type options. But for now, we have that open for public use, and so people can come check out basically everything that the park has to offer. I will just note that I went by the playground today, and there was a good probably 30 to 40 people out there. I think the timing was right. I ended up going by like 3:30 or so, but it was packed. Probably the busiest I've ever seen a playground at Bubbling Springs. If you count the old one too, is the busiest I'd ever seen it. So people are getting out and exploring it and discovering. So, and then shortly after that, we celebrated with our county library team for the Rady Pruder grand reopening and mural unveiling. And we have some photos here of the interior of the library. I think all of us agreed at the event that they did a great job with that library, and it looks like a new building on the inside. It's really nice. And so nice, open, and very fresh. I think they talked a little bit about the HVAC improvements that now make that a clean air certified building, and it's just a lot of good improvements there. So, and then we officially unveiled the mural, the first city public art project, and so that is now open and available to see. And this handy guide that the library has, they actually have these inside at their counter, shows all the elements of that mural. So it's very cool. So that was a good day. A lot of, and you know, I think people are excited about those two being open and back for the long term. So many good days of that. And so looking forward, we have a couple of things going on. We have launched sort of the call for applications of the Veterans Advisory Ad Hoc Committee. And so we have the QR code here and the note that people can come to the city clerk's office to get the application to apply to be a representative. And then those applications are due by June 2nd, about a month from now. And then we'll be bringing those applications back to the council shortly thereafter. Also, currently we have the nomination period for the 2025 Wainimi Hero Award. Shown here are the 2024 winners, Kevin Brannon from Real Guppy and George from the Ocean View Pavilion. And so we're looking for 2025's honorees. And there's also a QR code to submit the nomination for Hero. And then we have two upcoming events or deadlines, and the first is on, I'll start with the soonest first. The community poster contest is currently open. It's open until May 15th. We actually extended it a couple of weeks because the school district had said that they needed, that they're planning to participate, but they asked us for a couple weeks more to have all their students participate. So the deadline has been extended to May 15th, and we're just reminding people to get their posters in for the Beach Fest poster contest. And then a reminder that on May 26th, we are planning our Memorial Day ceremony at 8:30 a.m. at Wainimi Pier. For 2 weeks from now, we have two presentations scheduled: Public Works Week proclamation and their annual project update, along with Arthritis Awareness Month proclamation. That was the item that one of our local high school students had requested, and the council agreed to honor that this year. So that'll be coming forward as well. For the budget, for the agenda, we plan to have the in-depth workshop with more detail in it. Now that we have the big picture view, we're gonna get more into the details. So that'll probably be the main event, so to speak, for that May 19th agenda. We also, council had requested an item to talk about goals and objectives for Beacon, so we'll be bringing that back as well. And then we're working on an item to get approval for procurement for a backup generator at the Public Works Department. We are currently working with VCA PCD on that, so we'll be bringing it as long as we get everything taken care of through VCA PCD by then. So those are the items scheduled for May 19th.
Mayor, I have a question about this, something on this item. Mr. City Manager, has anyone got in touch with the student who requested that proclamation to see if she would come and accept it?
Yes, I believe she is coming to that meeting.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
So
you.
our clerk, who was honored today, reached out and or coordinated that already.
Always on it. Thank
Yep.
you.
Showing off a little bit now, but so that's the plan for May 19th, and that is everything I have.
Any questions for City Manager? All right, we'll move on to council member reports and comments. Councilwoman Perez.
I have nothing at this time.
Councilman Obama?
I participated in Take 5. I think a lot of us did.
I didn't.
Oh, man, that is a thing. It really is a thing. And there's other opportunities to read to school children, but yeah, if you get a chance, I'd strongly recommend doing it. I got to go on base to the Naval Base Port Hueneme here to the preschool. These little kids. And I was exhausted after 45 minutes. And I'm like, you know, I have such a high regard for preschool teachers. I mean, it's a handful. So I got to read the book, Maria Had a Little Llama. Yes. I got to read by council member Gama, yeah. So anyways, last Friday I had an hour and 20-minute conversation with Jason Hodge from the Port Commissioners, and I thought, you know, we need more of this, and I hope that we could find a way to bring individual council members with commissioners and have conversations that matter, so that we could keep pursuing, conversing with each other, working together, working closely together. And I really was surprised to see how much Jason and I agree on. He lives over at Silver Strand Beach, and so it was a really good conversation. So I hope that, and I did mention to Kristen during our walk the other day that maybe we could come up with a way to pair up and start continuing to have conversations that matter for us. Beacon Sand Summit was completed, and I'm really glad to see that agenda item. Like, what do we want out of Beacon? You know, we're looking forward to hopefully hearing from the Army Corps of Engineers, because we do have a significant problem, and you know, being able to look ahead is really important in this life that we live. And we know that if we don't get the Army Corps back here in October, we're going to have a real problem. And it's really interesting to watch and learn, but watch the sand as it's disappearing, because it is really moving fast. And so just look forward to that coming up. So the Sand Summit, basically, now this was the 4th Sand Summit that Beacon has sponsored. And the way Dr. Kiki Patch describes it is that, you know, the goal of the Sand Summit is to bring all the electeds and board members and regionally connected by a coastline, but to also learn and understand that each part of the coast that we operate is very different than the other one, and it's all connected, but it's different. And so she does a wonderful job of bringing the group up, and so we're at the master level oceanography point now, where now the conversations that people associated with Beacon are at a higher level of understanding. And the trick is to make sure that we're all not going to be here forever. We're going to move on. We're going to do this. We're going to pass on. But, you know, what do we pass on to the future leaders of our city? Hopefully we'll pass on a a great understanding of how important it is to get that dredge operation up and running and get the sand that we need. So, and of course, this weekend was wonderful. The library is just, it exceeded expectations beyond any reasonable amount. I mean, it's just so open and beautiful, and I'm just so excited to, 50 years from now, it'll still be there doing its thing. So really appreciate all the work that staff did to bring us all together this weekend. Really enjoyed walking with the community. I mean, it's just such a wonderful thing when, I don't know, how many people do we have? Hundreds, right? So thank you. Thank you, staff. Congratulations, Georgiana, Evelyn. Look forward to continued success and keeping us organized and productive.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, I attended 2 conferences. I was at the Clean Power Alliance conference on Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I was with SCAG Regional Policy Gathering in Palm Desert, and both were really good conferences. Got little good bits of information on what both organizations are doing, and hope to pass those on to our staff at some point. Tomorrow, I'll be in Sacramento again with SCAG to do some advocacy. Other than that, thank everybody for coming out to the library opening and the mural so-called unveiling. It was just a really nice event, and thank you, staff and everybody, for contributing to the organization of that. I thought it was a really well attended event. And I just want to, I looked at the newsletter for the that was issued last week. I think it came out last week, and I was so happy to see all the things that we're doing in there. And James, you're doing a great job with that newsletter. It just really captures everything that the city's doing. So it just made me very proud and very happy that we can, and the fact that you recap the council meetings is really helpful too. So I can carry that around, and people want to know what's going on. It's a good refresher. So thank you for that. That's it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I got to tour the United Water District watershed, Santa Clara River Bottom, and it was actually very educational. Didn't know how we filled our water tables here in Ventura County and how we reclaim the water runoff from the Santa Clara River Bottom. So that was an eye opener, and I really enjoyed that tour. So if you guys have not done it, I'd recommend it. I did get to golf with Commissioner Marianne Rooney in support of Veterans Gold Coast. And like Councilmember Gama said, just good conversation and for a good cause. So that was good to do. Saturday and Sunday, I actually walked Richard Bard Bubbling Springs Park, and to see everybody using the park was amazing. The covered patio was being used. The soccer park, the baseball park, the playground, the dog park, all of it. I mean, there was probably 150 people at the park. And so it was exciting for the community to see that. So good job, staff, city manager, and council. That's all I got.
Great, thank you. And I'll just say ditto. I really enjoyed this weekend, and it was really nice seeing the residents come out, and people from the community and people from outside the community. And so folks are going to be using the park that are from the county, right? And so I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. It was just really nice to see the people out enjoying it and see how excited that they are to have Bubbling Springs Park renovated and the new library. It's been wonderful. It's just been wonderful.
Mayor, I do have a comment before you move on.
Okay. I did want to say something. Okay, so I did attend the SAND Summit, so thank you both for giving me information to be able to dial in and the information about the meeting. So I did participate in that and learn. Second year I participate and learn a lot each time I go. I did participate in the Moore Park City Hall grand opening. It is so nice. It's so nice. If you have an opportunity. I think I'm saying it's so nice because I heard the horrors about the old one, which makes it, I'm sure, very nice. I will be on vacation starting Thursday. I'll be in Texas. My niece is graduating from college, and I'll be back on early Monday morning. Finally, I wanted to share this. I don't know, I left before I was able to talk to Council Member Perez. I remember when you walked in the library on Saturday, you said, "I'm so glad they kept the mosaic stream there." And so, did everyone get a chance to meet the artist who did that back in 1989? It was so funny because I got in line for Mr. Softy, and I needed to run to my car, so I just said to the lady, I said, "Hey, can you hold my space? I'll be right back." And I came back, and the lady behind me said, "Oh, she said if someone comes back and says that I'm holding the line, she's not telling the truth." And I was like, and then we started talking, and so I asked her, "Oh, so what do you do? Are you from Port Hueneme?" And she said, "Oh, I did the mosaic." And I was like, wow, in 1989. And so I went back to Steve. I said, "Do you know this lady?" I went back to Anna and Taylor and said, "Do you know this lady?" But it was just so nice, the whole thing, and just to kind of put a hat on it, say, and she's here. And she did that in 1989, and it's as beautiful today, I'm sure, as it was back then. So yeah, it was great being able to meet her. So I got her card, and so hope to be able to talk to her about just art. So that's all that I have. Councilmember Perez?
I did. I just wanted to follow up that comment. The librarian was telling me that they did everything they could to protect that, to make sure that was salvaged. It took a lot of work, but they 100% wanted that to be salvaged. And I just remember thinking when the flood came and the damage that was done, that's the first thought that came to my mind was, oh no, the mosaic, because I remember seeing that, how beautiful it was when you come into the library, and I'm just so happy that they did that. To talk about what we do at the park and our staff and how we do such a great job with community events. I see all over social media, actually, people actually talk about us and our events and our park and the things that we do, and it's in a negative way, but they're saying, look what Hueneme's doing, why can't Oxnard or why can't other cities do this? So it is really nice to see that the community outside of us actually pays attention to what we're doing. They're taking notice, and they're talking about it in their own communities, about how great we do for our own community. So thank you, staff.
So I took my wife today, you got to see the library. She's, a school teacher, was a school teacher. And we went in today, and every little corner, there's somebody doing homework, a lady reading to her child. It was just amazing. And it's just so open. And so just like what we all have seen, like the park is busy, but you go inside the library, and it's like, it's exactly what you wish to see. And it's something that we've been missing. So I'm really excited. It's just really nice.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to future agenda items. Councilmember, nothing. Councilmember Hernandez?
I don't have an agenda item, but I would like to ask if we could adjourn in honor of the missing and murdered Indigenous women everywhere. That's today is the National Murdered Missing Indigenous Women's Day, and just like to acknowledge and remember those women who never returned home. Indigenous women.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have anything, Mayor Pro Tem? Okay, great, thank you. If there's nothing else, we'll adjourn tonight's meeting in the memory of those
MMIW.
MMIW women everywhere. And so we'll now adjourn the meeting at, let's see, 9:41. Our next scheduled meeting is May 19th at 6:30.